Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining in on this episode. I actually have another trainer with us. Josh is here, and we're going to get in the nitty-gritty of punishments, e-collars, lead corrections, prong collars, and we're going to talk about the punishment side of things today. We kind of have a guideline. I tend to just stray away from that quite often, as everybody should know by now. But we're going to try to keep it back on task this time around. We both we talk a lot, and so yeah, I mean, Josh, if you want to feel free to introduce yourself and yeah, and after that, let me know if there's anything fun or new or interesting happening with your day or
All
week,
right.
your week.
Sounds good, brother. Yeah, so my name is Josh. I'm fairly new to the dog training world. Back in 2021, my wife moved, well, at the time, girlfriend moved up from Florida. I had just got out of the Marine Corps, and I haven't had a dog in forever. So she decides to go rescue a dog and brings him up. To my surprise, this thing's trying to eat everybody in my house. So that was a wake up call because I fell into that school of thought of it's all about how you train these dogs and how you love these dogs. I mean, how you raise them, show them love. I didn't really understand the punishment of the side of things, and how to use corrections until a dog that wanted to potentially hurt people was brought into my world. So that's what really sparked my journey into this, and I found it to be very therapeutic and a passion of mine. And this is how I got to where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've talked a couple times on different episodes on how I got my start. So I'm not gonna repeat that because me and you've had that conversation already.
Yes, sir.
For sure. So what about this last week or so? Like anything fun, interesting, eventful going on in your life?
So I work security as my main job, and now I am moved. I normally work night shifts, but now have been moved to days, which is awesome for me. Gives
That's
me more
great.
time with my dogs, more time with my wife, and more time with my son. So I'm pretty stoked about the new schedule.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, with me, I've for anybody listening in on this that doesn't know a little bit of this story going on, I'll give you a little bit of a cliff note. So I have Hayes. Hayes is a fairly new addition to the household. He was originally a board and train, but the owner didn't want Hayes back. The owner wanted me to find a new home, and Hayes is thriving in this environment. So I kept Hayes. Hayes is mine for good. Hayes is like a little Klekai, possibly husky mix. His only issue is that he gets overstimulated very easily, and when he gets overstimulated, he can be full on, potentially start a fight, and so yeah, he is thriving in this environment, gets overstimulated, and can cause a dogfight. But the thing is because he was lacking of a lot of boundaries, he didn't have any at first when we first brought him in. He also was lacking the right mental stimulation and exercise needs that he needed as an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
So what had happened more recently over the last few weeks is that he and my husky, Gojo, have had some scuffles. I wouldn't even call them intense dogfights, no damage to each other. Once redirected on me, I got some decent damage.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the first one was over a high level resource. They had pig ears, and one of them wanted the others, and then bam, it happened. And then the
Mm-hmm.
next one was because Hayes finished his food, went over to my husky Gojo, and decided to go for Gojo's food. And Gojo was like, "No, screw you." Gave him a little bit of a correction, and then Hayes is like, "Oh hell no, bitch! This is my fucking food." And then they started a fight. That's the time they redirected on me. I had a couple little decent wounds, uh, but I already knew that coming in. You know, some shit couldn't happen, and so what I've actually found interesting, we've been doing a lot of work with threshold levels, as well as Hayes understanding his fucking boundaries and what's not acceptable. And so it's been a couple times now where I've done something like we were practicing with takeaways and giving stuff back to Hayes so he lessens his approach to resource guarding. And it overstimulated him when Gojo came up to him. He, "Rah, rah," started getting his whole reactivity, but he calmed down, went up, and then came right back down right when I told Gojo to get the fuck away. And then yesterday was a good one. I was brushing all the dog's teeth, and when I was doing Hayes's teeth, he was getting more and more stimulated, and Gojo walked up, and I saw them lock eyes. As you were telling me earlier, we'll get into this, the loading, and I saw them getting ready, getting loading. So I gently, I first put the toothbrush down. I gently held their collars, and so that way I'm not creating a backwards pressure drive, and they almost went at it, right? And at this time, all they went over threshold. They both wanted to get each other. I was able to tell them enough. Leave it. And they both came back down. I didn't have to separate them. I could let their collars go at that moment and they were okay again. And that's just telling me that what I'm doing right now with working through these issues with them, forcing them to deal with their problems while I am managing the environment and creating these boundaries and being consistent. Consistency is key on this one. They are starting to be able to come back down from their threshold levels a lot faster, and it looks extremely hopeful. So I'm really excited about that.
No, that's awesome. That really is. That we did talk about this a little earlier, and that's such a great thing because I remember your initial video that you posted on that, and there was a lot of commentary in there.
Hmm.
But I feel what people don't realize, you are aware of your dogs, you understand your dogs, you understand their situation, and you give yourself the ability to step in when needed. You're not dumb.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
I think, and here's the I've talked recently. I have another podcast coming out soon. Where Colin Linda Paul was.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking, and what we actually dove into. It's going to be the episode right before this one. We dove into the world of social media as a professional in the pet care world, right?
Okay.
And it's nuts. But one thing that I did notice about those comments when I was first showing how I'm working these dogs with eating together rather than just managing and separating is a lot of the commentary I'm getting is why don't you just separate them? You know, they may never be able to eat together safely and you walk away. It's like I don't plan on ever letting my dogs be unattended with each other. You know, somebody's going to always be watching them anyway. Somebody's always, I'm going to be there when they're eating. Because I know that things can happen, regardless if they're the most balanced dogs in the world behaviorally, shit can go wrong fast, especially in a multi-dog household. And what a lot of people, I think they're forgetting is that, yes, I am putting these videos out there and it's just a 60-second clip of what we're doing. And they just assume that I'm just going to force them to be like this because this is what I want. And they're completely forgetting that there's a plan B. The plan B is if they just can't do it, then I'm just not going to have them eating next to each other. You know, like there's always that option. It's not going to hurt me. But if this is an issue right now, then it can bleed into other aspects of their life. So I want to work on this issue while it's here, while it's fresh, before it gets worse and worse and worse.
No, 100%. Couple of things off of that I want to piggyback off of.
Hmm.
One, it's your dogs. If you want them to do a certain thing, you can make them do what you want to do, as long as you're not like intentionally injuring them, so on and so forth. Like you can definitely work them through this issue to prevent it, because like you said, it can definitely bleed over into different aspects. And when you put in the work in impulse control, it gives you that split second extra for you to react to your dogs in a potential more dangerous situation. And on top of that, we like, I have this conversation with many dog trainers, you included. When someone comes to me and is like, "Hey, I need a behavior mod. My dog is fearful, aggressive, animal reactive, aggressive slash aggressive, so on and so forth." I ask certain questions. Why do you need this done? What's your household look like? Where do you live? The reason for it is, there was a guy I had a conversation with who told me, "Hey, my dog is dog reactive, and
Hmm.
I want to work on that." I'm like, "Okay, well, what's going on in your house? Why do you want to work on it?" He's like, "Oh, I just want to." I'm like, "Where do you live?" He's like, "Oh, I have 5 acres." I'm like, "How often does your dog come in contact with another dog?" He's like, "Rarely." So I'm like, "Why do you want to do that then? You know, you were going to have to, we're basically going to force this dog into a stressful situation that's unnecessary,
Yeah.
right?" So I don't do it. because your dog is never going to see another person, another dog. And the only times that it has when you took them somewhere, which I can help you manage it in that type of aspect. Yes, that's easier, but we don't have to now expose your dog to other dogs and have them go over threshold and do all these other things that is stressful to your animal. Obviously, in some cases you need to,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like I had a case where they live in Atlanta, so and they have to be able to take their dog out and walk them out and not have issues or minimize those issues. So that's different. And the reason I bring this up because like what you just said is important. You have a three dog household.
Hmm.
You have a child. You have your wife.
Hmm.
You talked about how there was an incident where you tried to stop and the dogs unfortunately redirected on you, and then you got a little injured
Yep.
during that situation. What if that was your daughter?
I mean, well, you know this too. Viewers on this podcast might know. Some might also know about this. I had a situation where a lot of people online were trying to run me through the dirt. And the whole idea was that I'm a wife abuser because
Okay.
there was the incident with the pig ears where I was outside on a live talking dog training, and and that was the pig ear incident. And from inside, I hear a dog fight happening. And so I just put my phone down, and the live is still actively going. I hear my wife inside. She's screaming at the dogs. It's high intense, high energy, high emotional, especially for somebody like my wife who doesn't work with dogs on this capacity, you know? She's not a professional. And so we get the dogs outside, and that allows me the room to manage the situation. And my wife is right there in the midst of it, just trying to help in the best way she can, but it's not helpful to me. So I pushed her out of the way so they don't redirect on her, and then I managed the situation. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, with the emotional state everything was in, high stress, high emotions, my wife, yells at me, "Don't push me." And I get it. I get it. But people were just running with that shit, right?
People
People were
don't
running with
understand.
that shit. It's like, nah, I'll push my wife to stop her from getting bit. You
Yeah,
know?
no, one hundred
Yeah.
percent. I had a dog in my care who were training to do service dog work, and I had to do a whole crate rotation because my female dog doesn't really care. You know,
Hmm.
you got along with her. My male and this Czech Shepherd they both just weren't compatible, really. You know what I mean? So it took a long while for them to get to used to being able to be outside, obviously supervised together. And in the beginnings of these things, there was an incident and my wife was like screaming and I'm like shut the fuck up.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and I wasn't trying to be rude, I wasn't trying to be nasty. It was more like you screaming is not helping the situation. I need you to calm down. You know, so once I got her to like relax so I can focus on this, I grabbed both my dogs, break stick handy as always, because I have a buddy breed, popped them off, checked the dogs, no issues, no puncture wounds, no nothing. It was just more like a little scuffle. Um, I do what I do normally after my dogs, whenever I have a dog fight or if my dogs ever fight, then held them there for a little bit so they kind of visibly relaxed. And then I let them be. And then I just walked them in the house, put them in their own kennels and relax. So I like to do like end things on a positive note. Like I don't want to separate them. And that's thing to remember is like teeth on each other versus okay, we relaxed and he didn't come back at me,
Hmm.
she didn't come back at me. But
Yep.
yeah, sometimes there's situations where you have to say things in a certain manner, act in a certain manner to help you deal with the bigger problem. And people are always going to say something, but I don't think that was wrong of you.
No.
You push your wife out of the way of danger,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Give me just a second. I'm gonna cover these birds because they are gonna be going like crazy this whole time.
Gotcha.
Give me 1 second.
You're good, brother.
Cool deal. I am back. That was so quick to shut them up. Just put a sheet over the birds, turn the light off near them, and they are good to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so digressing a little bit, when it comes to, reactivity and things, when we're talking to people online, we're just, most of the time we're trying to educate about like learning theory or training methodologies, different techniques and stuff. But most of the time when somebody is coming in and they have a reactive dog and they need to know what to do, we're going to tell you to go hire a trainer because it's not that we can't answer your question, but there's so many little nuances that we have to physically see in order to really tell you what needs to happen. This is also includes your own handling skills, your own environment. There's so much involved with this, that when you go and ask around, people, it's kind of like window shopping. People will go and call one trainer, call another, and call another, and call another, and ask all these questions, and then they'll try to take all of those answers. All the individual answers, combine them and try to make it work. And it usually just doesn't work.
And now, and no, 100%. And let's not also forget, every trainer is different.
Hmm.
Like we talk about, and you mentioned learning theory,
Yep.
uh, punishment versus positive reinforcement versus force free, so on and so forth. There is, and everything is basically theoretical
Yep.
in a nutshell.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, so that means is nothing is strict like facts or in a sense of that it's scientific. This is how this
Hmm.
is. Like some things are obviously, but how we go about it, that's when you come up, you kind of come across like the art of things. So no two trainers really would do everything the same way. We might agree on some things, but there's going to be a situation where like, oh, I would put a prong on that. Or a person's like, oh, I would put an e-collar on that. Or someone's like, I'm just going to use this turkey leg. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways of going about it. When we give these advices or when we have these conversations,
Hmm.
we talk about how theoretically things work, but each dog is so different. You got to pay attention to it. Like I have a
Yeah.
buddy who's working with a little pit mix. And normally I would tell you, what caused your dog to be where it's at now isn't really that important. It is, but it's not because we're never going to figure out what got your dog to that point. So it's a lot easier just to fix the issues versus figuring out what caused it.
Yeah.
But however, my buddy saw that whenever he put like a martingale on this dog, whatever, he had to give a little bit of a leash correction. The dog would like shut down and just lose itself. And it realized that this dog was just overly corrected. Like for it seemed like everything is he did, this dog was just afraid of. So
Yeah.
instead of so instead of like let me correct your reactivity when you're trying to jump, lunge, and bite, which you have to, but he's like, instead of you doing that, let me just show you how positive interaction with me really is versus I'm putting a prong, I'm just popping you all the time, or using
Hmm.
an e-collar and simming you. Like it is so many nuances. And you know me, I'll put on a prong or something real quick if I have to deal with a situation that's potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
But there will be those times when like that dog is so ill conditioned to whatever tool it is that right now, me just sitting here by its kennel and just gradually giving him piece of hot dog, or leaving him alone, walk by, do some hot dog drive-bys is going to be so much more beneficial than me trying to correct a reactive situation. Like it's so
Hmm.
much nuances. And I think you and I, we had a conversation with another person who was like, my dog resource guard's in this corner. And I'm like, well, you got to kind of teach it, that's not a good thing, because in that situation, it was more like that dog had free roam of everything, no boundaries set. So,
Yeah.
so many things that go into this.
Yeah. So I mean, we're going to be talking about punishment here in a second. I want to read this to you. This is actually pretty cool. I got a private message from a dog trainer on TikTok, and
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the type of shit I respect. I love this so much. And you're talking about, there's force free, utilizing punishment, positive reinforcement, so on. We'll get further into that. But I've always sat here and said, like, me, I'm a fan of as many tools as I can get in my tool belt, the better, and I'll use them all, right? But there are some people that prescribe to a force-free kind of approach or a positive reinforcement or even compulsion. And I will say that there's a place for you somewhere in the dog training world. But the problem that I see a lot of times is that us dog trainers have egos. And a lot of people out there, when they have an ideology of a certain methodology that they're going to use, if their training doesn't work for the dog, then it's the dog, not their training, right? And so let me read this to you, and you'll love this, right? I'm not going to name names and stuff like that, but they private messaged me, they waved, and they sent me a picture of a Malinois. And this is my female in Northern Nevada. I said, she's pretty. She said, thank you. She's one of the toughest dogs I've worked with, but a balanced trainer straightened her out in less than 2 minutes. She needs Lima, and responds well to positive reinforcement, but needs strong boundaries. I like to say she hugs you with her teeth, LOL. And then they're giving me some props like, I like your videos, they're so good. And then they asked me about my podcast and YouTube because they found that too. And then here is what I love, right? They said, I went to school to be an R plus trainer and even wanted to be entirely fear free. Then I trained a Malinois who literally knocked my butt every time I trained her. She was super sweet about it too. The said Malinois is going to be joining my home this week. I have two reactive dogs at home that hate other dogs. So my friend, who is a balance trainer, is going to help me because I don't have the luxury of R plus training. I need the house to be safe as quickly as possible. Or I don't have the luxury or time for R plus training. And that's really important here, right? This trainer right here, although they are a force-free R plus trainer, they know they have issue dogs at home. And they know this dog is coming into the household with these issue dogs. And they know that R plus is great with the enough time. If you have time every single day for hours on end to train your dogs with R plus, you can get through almost anything, even high level reactivity. But most people and that hire trainers don't have the trainer living at their house, right? And so like it's extremely hard to do. And this person knows this situation and knows that, look, I'm going to have somebody come in and use punishment because that's going to be the quickest way possible to make my household work. And I really respect that person for they have their own ideology, but they're willing to step aside themselves because they know there's some dogs they can't handle and situations they can't handle that a different approach is more appropriate.
I agree 100% with that. Sometimes we got to understand maybe my method isn't correct. Like there could be a dog that is very sensitive. I haven't come across one. I feel like, to be honest, most pet owners just say their dog is quote unquote sensitive and you
Hmm.
can't do things. But I I I digress. I digress. There definitely can be a dog that's very sensitive where all I have to do is say no, and that's more than enough.
Hmm.
Raise my tone a little bit, whatever, and we're good. And then, or me just not giving it the toy he wants or she wants, and all of a sudden, the dog is behaving. I definitely believe that. You know
Yep.
what I mean? But also believe there's going to be those dogs that need a little bit of a firmer hand. But then I
Yep.
will also argue in R plus, if you withhold a treat, isn't that technically negative punishment?
It depends. If you're withholding the treat to reduce the behavior, then yeah. But if you're withholding the treat to increase the behavior, then it's negative reinforcement. But that's still not R plus, that's R minus, you know? And the thing about positive reinforcement trainers is that positive reinforcement and negative punishment tend to be a lot more okay than positive punishment and negative reinforcement. So if they're using negative reinforcement, it's usually something that they really refuse to acknowledge that they're doing.
I agree. I feel like no matter how hard you try,
Hmm.
when it comes to the four quadrants, you can't but help interweave throughout them all
I
in
mean,
some way, shape, or
it's
form.
because it's if you want to stick to a single quadrant, by all means, try your hardest, but there is no way you actually are going to do it because it's people think that it's stagnant. You're going to either use positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement or positive punishment or negative punishment, right? No, they all bleed into each other and it's very fluid. It's very fluid. Right? And so like there's times that I can do something that is going to start off with a positive punishment that turns into a negative reinforcement that switches to a positive reinforcement all within 5 seconds of each other, right? Like that happens all the time. It's just we have to know what we're communicating with the dog and how the dog is taking it, right? What is the dog understanding from what we're trying to tell it? And if we're not, effectively communicating, that's when you have dogs that end up being neurotic messes or just not, you think that the dog's supposed to understand this by now, and they just don't. That's a trainer issue. That's a handler issue, not a dog issue. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, here's my response, right? I said, I really respect that although you prescribe to R plus, you're willing to have someone experienced with punishment to come help. Too many people are not self-aware enough to know their limitations regarding their training methods. And that actually, that last sentence there, people don't know their own limitations to their training methods. That's the reason why I invited you to this podcast, is because I was showcasing me using an e-collar differently than I normally do. And you use e-collars differently than me, and we've had disagreements on it, which is completely fine. But we decided let's do a podcast episode because I decided, I have limitations even with this tool where I use it very effectively for a positive punishment approach. But when I'm utilizing it for negative reinforcement, there's my limitation. I'm not as advanced doing it that way because I normally don't. I usually, with negative reinforcement, utilize a lot of leash handling skills, opposed to a training tool like e-collars. And so, like, me and you discussed this a little bit, but I wanted to go in a lot more depth here. And here we are.
No, yes. I I've been following you for for quite a bit now on TikTok. And one of the reasons why I really followed you is because me and you, for the most part, live in the same school of thought. And I'm like, I fuck with this guy, you know,
Right?
because a lot of people in balance, R plus, whatever it is, they like to sugarcoat things a lot.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, there's that thing. Actually was listening to another podcast the other day. It was Miracle Canine, Dave, the dog trainer. It's a great podcast. I would recommend it to anybody. He's very intelligent. But he was talking about, it's one of his older episodes, but he was talking about how, like, there is this thing going on where the R plus community is just trying to beat down anybody else. And you know that whole saying, like, you don't build the biggest tower by knocking down all the towers around you. You build the biggest tower by building the biggest tower. And if
Yes.
positive reinforcement was better than anything else, they would monopolize all of dog training, right? Because even balance trainers, people doing punishment shit, I would love to give treats and cookies all day. I really would. That would be so nice, you know?
No,
Um,
yeah.
but
Like,
he also sat there and said, what found interesting, because it's true, is balance trainers have a problem in the opposite aspect where they're trying to be the softest balance trainers ever, right? And sugarcoat everything rather than just straight up, like what I do a lot of times is like, don't sugarcoat what an e-collar is. That shit fucking hurts. It's aversive. They don't like it. Obviously, if you're using it like I do with punishment, high level punishment, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's supposed to hurt. Good. I hope the dog doesn't want to fucking fuck around again. Like, I
no,
hope the
100,
dog
of
decided
course.
that that was so aversive, they're not going to go and do that god awful, dangerous behavior.
No,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
100%. It's the same thing like a prong collar.
yeah.
Like, this is the thing. So I 100% want to I agree with you. Me and you use things differently. However, there is a moment. There's a reason why the e-collar has all the levels it has.
Hmm.
Even for those for the ones that only go through, leave it for like 1 through 10 or 1 through 20. What's going on is they're just jumping up they're jumping up higher levels. So what's a 1 to them might be more like a 10 on my e-collar,
Hmm.
right? And going back to it all, where I want to start when we get into this conversation,
Hmm.
you mentioned something I think is extremely important that a lot of people kind of neglect nowadays when it comes to e-collars and when it comes to punishment: leash handling skills.
Yep.
Leash handling skills is so important because it's more personal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's much more personal than an e-collar.
I would say if you can't do an appropriate correction on a leash, like time it properly, you have no reason to have an e-collar in your hand. If you can't time a leash correction, yeah, don't
No,
grab an e-collar.
yes, no, 100%. Because it's just so like so many trainers nowadays that I see. They're like, okay, you come to my program, yada yada, It's a X amount of program, blah, 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 6-week board and train. And we're
Hmm.
going to have your dog off leash train. You're going to have your own e-collar and all this stuff. I'm not going to hate on you, bro. If this is how what you do, and this is how you do your business, how you do your business,
Yeah.
man. Whatever you got to do to put food on the table. But let's be real. Your dog is going to be this much more trained because you're taking on maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 board and trains on top of clients. How much time are you really giving this dog
Yeah.
when you're over there, right? And then now you're saying, I'm gonna put this e-collar on it and I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give you a quick rundown, right?
Yeah.
On how to use it, and you're gonna be an expert. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I mean, and I know you're not knocking on boarding trains because there are a lot of
No,
boarding
I'm
trains
not
out there
knocking
that are
on it.
doing things really well. Like I've seen boarding trains where they bring the dog there, they spend that first day with the owner, seeing all these levels of reactivity, seeing what needs to happen. Then they do the boarding train, and then they do numerous follow-up sessions. So that way they know for a fact, like at home sessions, like I would normally do at home sessions, and they do numerous ones. So that way they know for a fact that the owner is set up for success after the boarding train.
No, 100%.
You
There
know,
are
like
definitely
there's some good ones out there, but man, there's also other ones that's like you bring me my dog, I'll fix the dog for me. Like I can for me, for instance, I can make any reactive dog behave for me, but not all my clients are me.
yes. No, no, 100%. And that's what I meant. You're right. I'm not
Yeah,
knocking on
yeah, yeah.
boarding trains. Like there are very good boarding trains
But I
out
see what
there.
you're
And
saying too. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to harp on what you just said, because like it in a way it's fair because like what you just said really rings true. They're not me.
Hmm.
They're not me. So really quick, I want to back up when I was telling you guys about Elias, right? And I'm gonna harp on Elias because he's an interesting case when it comes with how I learned everything. You know, I've had other experience with other dogs and everything. To be honest, they're a lot
So
softer
so
there.
so let's run down real quick because I know who Elias is, but others
Yes.
might not. So who's Elias?
Okay. So Elias was a dog I told everybody about in the beginning how what got me into this. Elias is a you. So I used the wisdom panel. And the wisdom panel says he's basically uh almost 30% American Pit Bull Terrier, 30 something percent American Staffordshire Terrier with some Bulldog and Lab and everything else, right?
Hmm.
And my wife just said, don't forget the Lab. And um, so the thing was, when he came up from Florida, he was in a no kill shelter since he was about 18 weeks, babe? 16. 16 weeks. So he was in a no kill shelter since he was 16 weeks old. From then, when we got him, he was about a year and a half, give or take. So his whole life was in a no-kill shelter, and we were his third home because he was returned twice. Now, they told us there's no human aggression in him, but he doesn't get along with small dogs.
Hmm.
When he got brought up to us from Florida, when my wife drove him up, he came into my house. My family was in here. I had just bought the house. We were getting everything set up. She walks him in in a harness, nonetheless. Walks him in, and he is lunging, growling, and snapping at everybody in the house. I was
Fun.
upstairs. Go ahead.
I said, oh, I was just saying that's fun.
Yeah. You know, everybody was like, what the fuck? And I was upstairs taking a shower. And I'm excited because at this point, I was 10 years in the Marine Corps, had just gotten out, and I haven't had a dog in years, bro. In
Hmm.
10 years, I have not had a dog. And I love dogs. And I was excited. I'm taking a shower. I'm like, I set up this little kennel, I put it right next to my side of the bed. I'm like, yo, I just got a new best friend. This is gonna be amazing. I hear my wife come in, and I'm like, hey, baby. And I'm like, where's the dog? I'm like, where's the dog? She's like, he's in the kennel. I'm like, and I'm walking out, and she's like, so something happened. I'm like, what? And as soon as I cross the threshold, like how my room is set up, I get step out of the bathroom. There's like a mini hallway because the closets are right there. There's a corner, and that opens up to the bedroom. I come out, and there he is. He looks at me. I look at him, and I'm like, "Oh, cute dog." And I'm looking at my wife, not even staring at him, really. No eye contact, no nothing. He's just lunging, and growling, snarling, and biting on the wire kennel. And then I look at him, and it just gets even worse. And he's just trying to get at me through the kennel. And I'm like, "What is this?" She's like, "I don't know what happened."
Hmm.
I'm like, "Okay." So at first I chalked it up to 14-hour car ride. He's slow. He's been in the car for a very long time. He's probably really stressed because of it all. Let's give him a couple days. You know what I mean?
Oh
We
yeah, the
had a
decompression.
yeah, I thought it was what it is. I had him in the backyard on a tether because the previous owners didn't finish the whole backyard. They had like a section still needed to be finished.
Hmm.
So having on a tether, we had an acquaintance come over and we told her, hey, don't let your son in the backyard. He's kind of weird. We're still figuring him out. She's like, oh, okay. Told her son, don't go in the backyard. But what does she do? She goes into the backyard.
Of
You know,
course.
and Elias went from looking at her to a very stiff tail wag, ears forward, and from panting to a closed mouth. All the signs of I'm about to bite the fuck out of you. And she turned around, ran, and he went for her and got her on the forearm. Luckily, didn't break nothing. And that's when I started looking for trainers, found one, went to them. They put an e-collar on him. They're like, this is how you condition it. See you in 4 weeks. And
Oof.
I was, yeah. And I was like, what does that mean? How do I use this? You just told me how to condition it, which great. I'm a fan of that, but that was it. That was the limits of what they taught me. Luckily, I had a friend who was a dog trainer when he got out the Marine Corps. Had some contacts. He put me into what to study, what to read, what to look into, and I kind of dove into this world by myself because I had no other choice. Because it was during COVID, not many other people really had openings, and they're doing it basically like that. Like, hey, we only have sessions this far out, so this is really all we can do for you. So I returned the e-collar and said, you know what, I'm gonna do it for myself because you're gonna give me for a month alone. Might as well just do it by myself, anyways. And I learned a lot. And I also learned how quickly these things can go wrong if you don't know what you're doing, you don't have the right guidance. I was
Yeah.
just blessed of having people with experience really guide me and show me what to look and how to do it and who to look into to learn more on my own.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That's good stuff. Like, so this does lead into my the next topic or continuing the topic.
Yeah, we've been doing pretty good with this.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, punishment, right, and dog training. Uh, so to touch face value on what punishment means in dog training is we got to not look at it as a layman in terms of what punishment is. Punishment
Mm-hmm.
only means to reduce the behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we use punishments in dog training, it can literally be anything. Anything that reduces a behavior and the outcome, the behavioral change, is what dictates if we're actually using punishment or not, right? And so examples would be like I've had dogs that are noise sensitive and I click the clicker and they're like, didn't like that. I'm like, great. And I'm going to use this as a punishment. You know,
Right.
when most people would use a clicker as like a reward marker. And like, so yeah, I mean, punishments can be almost anything, right? And now when it comes to punishments, that's where we get the tools, right? We get these aversive tools. And dogs at a base level, they're opportunistic predators with little knives in their mouth. And they're going to gravitate towards things that feel good, stay away from things that don't, right?
I use
And
that comment that you used. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
mhm,
That opportunistic predator with knives or mouse. Ever since I
mhm.
heard you say it, I use it all the time because it's a
That's what they
great
are.
description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
when I say it, now you'd be funny because when I say it to people, because I try to be very honest when I talk to clientele,
Hmm.
and I'm like, this is why this is important, this is why this is, because your dog can be the sweetest thing. However, I keep saying that, however, they can be dangerous if left to their own devices. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, and I
And
think I think it's important to describe them accurately, and that's the reason why I describe them like that. Opportunistic predators with knives in their mouth, right? Uh, it's because it puts it back in perspective that this isn't your little baby. This is a fucking dog that can do damage if things are not done appropriately. They can fuck some shit up. Whether it's you, another animal, a child, friends, family, neighbors, random homeless people on the side of the road, who cares? The dog can be dangerous. And yeah, that's why I say it like that because that is literally what they are. So, yeah,
100%.
but
No, yeah, sorry. What you just said something is it's crazy because I'm trying to cut you off and I
no,
apologize.
you're good. Good. Keep going. I like
Uh,
this.
what you just said, opportunistic predator. So one thing, Elias does not like children.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's children, or I don't know if it's just people running around, but kids seem to set him off really quick.
Yeah.
That's dangerous, bro. I have a 2-year-old son. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, um, always, regardless of the dog, whether it's a good dog, quote unquote, or not, my son is never unattended with any of my dogs. I think
Oh,
that's
you're not gonna be like other people and let your son crawl over your dog and then yell at your dog for growling.
right.
You're
Yeah,
not
like
gonna
this
do
is
that.
horrible. Horrible of me. How dare I not let my son experience a dog, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I don't.
Your son needs to learn at a young age what it feels like to get bit, you know? Like
Right, my 2-year-old gets bit by my,
Oh,
what is he, about
jeez.
70-pound bully mix of a dog, right? But no, like I put in a lot of work of Elias, and
Hmm.
I do, I guess, for lack of a better term, balance. You know what I mean? I don't like to be like, this is what I am. I do what works.
Yeah.
But I feel it works for the dogs what I do.
Yep.
And I did a lot of desensitive. I can say it. I'm Hispanic. Desensitive. Can you say it for me?
Desensitization.
Thank you. The brown came out real quick. First language was Spanish, so you gotta
Yeah,
give me
you're
a
good.
moment.
You're good.
And
I
so
got you.
my wife used to do this thing, and I had him on a muzzle for a long time when my son was a child, and there was a lot of like management, leash, and everything. You're just not coming around my son. But I started doing this thing where, like, whenever my son would touch him, I would give him food. Touch him, give him food. Touch him, give him food. So then I got to the point whenever I had my son on the phone and I'm changing him, Elijah would come over, lay down, and I touch my son because he wanted food. I'm like, oh, we're not doing that. You're not just getting to come and touch him. So that's a so we went back to that. Obviously muzzle, everything was safe. I'm always aware of my dog. I know people might be like, I don't know, that was safe. I'm very hyper vigilant when it comes to my dog and my son.
Hmm.
Um, and then we started doing a lot of escape and avoidance with that. I don't want him around my kid. So he learned like he's not to go to him unless, allowed in certain situations. And when my son started walking, I made it very apparent to my son, even though he doesn't really understand, you're not allowed to go into Elias's space either,
Yeah.
because you got to respect that. So it's a dual thing. You don't get to go into Roman's space, and Roman doesn't get to go into Elias's space or Kona's space. There's a lot of mutual respect with that. So my dogs look to me for guidance on a lot of these things because they understand. To now, with Roman's almost is going to be 2 next month. He can be walking around, and I'll be out with him. Next week he'll be 1 and 2. Sorry, my bad, baby. And she's correcting me here. And um, the dogs leave him alone. They'll follow me, but whenever my son turns, they give him wide space to let him go do his thing and walk. You
Yep.
know. And then when Roman gets too close to their kennel, I'm like, no. He turns around, walks away from me. So I'm building that trust with all these dogs. But there was points where there was punishment added to this just as much as I did positive reinforcement with their interaction. There was again, for lack of a better word, a balance to it. Hey, you will respect my son because of something that you do something unlike. There's going to be a punishment to it. I'm going to add it depending on how adversive it is, depending on what gets done, what you do. But I'm also going to reward everything you do. So whenever my son will walk towards them and my dogs got up and moved away, they got high rewards. Good boy, Elias. Good girl, Kona. Here's a hot dog. Here's a piece of ham. They're like, oh. And I started doing so often they realized if we move out of this kid's way, we're getting something nice, you
Hmm.
know? So it is, I feel you have to have both of these things for the dog to truly understand what you want of it. If you focus too much on one thing, that's when you have a negative reaction. I feel like if you're just too positive, you can have maybe not a aggressive reaction, but a accident of the dog running to him and bumping the baby out the way, or trying to play with the baby and there's an accidental issue. Or if you're too aggressive with it, there's a lot of fear with that. And now it's like this thing is always scary to me. I'm moving. Now I'm back into a corner. What do? I'm afraid, and you lash out. There has to be a balance, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I say all the time that when using dogs are operant creatures, right? They learn through, I mean, obviously through various ways from, visual learning to classical conditioning, but operant conditioning, operant animals, they learn from experiences, right? And and if those experiences are aversive, they're going to stay the fuck away. If they're rewarding to them, they're going to continue gravitating towards doing whatever it was that was rewarding. And now, if you just ignore the punishment side of operant conditioning, that's 50% of the dog's learning capabilities out the window, right? And so like I do certain force-free approaches sometimes, like you said, whatever works for the dog. But an example would be incompatible behaviors, right? And the whole idea behind it, and it does work for some dogs, is if a dog is lunging, you can teach the dog a different behavior that is incompatible with the lunging behavior, right? And if you reward that other behavior enough and high enough, it will reduce or extinguish the other behavior that they were doing, right? Give them a different outlet. Yeah, it can work. But I've also said plenty of times, and I've said it to you plenty of times, that once a dog rehearses a behavior, there is the chance that they will rehearse that behavior again. Period. Period. And
So true.
so even if you teach an incompatible behavior, like I had a Sheltie lunging at cars, and so we taught an incompatible behavior to sit, right? Sitting is not lunging and high level rewards. So the Sheltie was like, okay, 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 I'll do that, I'll do that. But we never taught the dog what not to do. We just taught it something else, that a different expectation, right? Like, okay, this
Hmm.
is what we prefer you doing. And then when the dog got overstimulated, guess what it did?
Lunged.
Lunged the fuck at some cars, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
so at that point, I'm like, nah, let's do some leash corrections real quick. And I just did like two or three. It was a very sensitive dog, like two or three leash corrections when it did that. And then guess what? It stopped lunging at cars completely. And then it was engaging and sitting instead. Now it knew what to do and what not to do. Bam.
Wow.
Operant conditioning, right?
Yes.
Um,
100%.
and so like that's the whole point of punishment, right? Is not because we want to hurt our dogs. It's because the dogs need to know what's unacceptable, right? For the human counterpart. And it could be anything. Like you live in an HOA, you don't want your dogs digging holes all throughout your front yard, right? I don't
Hmm.
live in an HOA. My dogs can fucking dig, right? I'm not going to punish the behavior while you might punish the behavior because the human aspect of it is going to also take a play on what we punish. How do we want our dogs to be? Because at a baseline, dogs are dogs. Like I said, opportunistic predators with knives in their mouth. They have no morality. There's no such thing as a good or bad dog. Dogs are just fucking dogs. And what makes them good or bad is based on the solo individual human and what we find as acceptable or unacceptable behavior. And again, back to the digging thing. You might not like digging. I might be okay with it. Very, very different things. You might think my dog's a bad dog because I let it dig it's hard out, and that's not the case. It's just my dog has different expectations than your dog.
100%. No, I agree with that. You know what I mean? There's going to be, I feel like there's like common things across the board where everybody will agree on. At least I think everybody should agree on, like leash manners, house manners, in the sense of like you're not bolting out the door.
You think everybody agrees on that shit?
Well, I'm saying they
They
should. You know what I
should.
mean? Like
So
I
no,
feel
I've actually had debates where people will debate me on I shouldn't be teaching loose leash walking, whether it's using positive or a positive reinforcement or positive punishment or whatever, right? I shouldn't be teaching loose leash walking because dogs should be able to make their own decisions without us being like so controlling all the time. And it's like, what?
I feel like that's such a flawed. So okay, let me back up for a second. Depending, like if you had like a 5 acre house in the middle of nowhere and you don't care that your dog bolts up the door, fine. But let's say like here in my HOA, like you're talking about, my dog shouldn't be bolting on the door because you don't know what he's gonna do. He might scare, yada yada. But let's talk about in a public setting with multiple people, multiple dogs. Your dog shouldn't be dragging you down the park to go play with the child or the dog or whatever,
Hmm.
because me as the father of that kid or the handler of the other dog, I might not want you to, you know. But
Yeah.
you are right. Some things like what I might consider good, you might not. back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. But going off what you just said, I think it's unfair when people say you should just let your dog be a dog, because those are the same people that tell you it's all about how you love an American Pit Bull Terrier.
It's the
And
same people that don't ever want your dog to be off leash on an e-collar because they think it's abusive, even though you're giving the dog the freedom at that point to be a dog, while you know that you can trust the dog because you have the e-collar as a safety protocol.
yes, exactly.
You
And
know,
you're thinking, yeah, and you're thinking this, and you're like, oh, if I just love my dog, we're fine. It's never going to do anything bad. But again, what's bad to you, to the dog, it's natural.
Yep.
There's, I forget who it was. He puts it on Instagram talking about, oh, when a golden retriever retrieves, is a good boy. When a Labrador does this, is a good boy. But when two bullies go at it, they're bad dogs, even though that's what,
Even though that's their genetics.
yeah, you know what I mean? And then that comes into us where it's like us as handlers. I'm not gonna give Elias the opportunity to, like, I'm gonna open my door wide open, and I know he's reactive. And I'm not gonna have a prong. I'm not gonna have a leash period or no e-collar. Leave
Hmm.
my door wide open while someone or something goes run by and be like, I hope he doesn't go for him this time because I just want him to be a dog. And e-collars are bad. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
horrible and irresponsible of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So even if you live on that 5 acre property you were talking about, and you just let your dogs run the fuck out the door every time you open it, right? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
You're on a 5 acre property. But what about when you have to drive somewhere and take your dog somewhere? When you
Yep.
open that door, they will bolt the fuck out,
Yep.
right? So, like, even having those rules in place where you open the door and they wait for you to release them out the door, that's a safety measure that bleeds into other areas of the dog's life that could
Agreed.
potentially be dangerous.
Yep, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I was just using that more of like, if you want to really argue this, I'll give you a scenario where it might be okay. But no, like, I prefer, like, Elias, whenever I open the door, he's not allowed to bolt.
Yep.
That's a precaution I made because of how he is. Whenever I open the car door, he's not allowed just to jump in. He needs to wait for it because, um, I need to put some impulse control into this dog.
Hmm.
That's what he needs. What I discovered, he needs some impulse control. Leave it. Because right now he was just at the door, and now here's my stin, and he comes right back.
Yep.
And that was a look. So what just happened?
Yeah, let's talk about what just happened there because this leads into mine and your differences on how we use tools, right? And I think this is really, really interesting. And I think it's really appropriate for more people to understand this because just because I don't agree with you doesn't make you wrong.
Mhm.
Right? It doesn't. It just, like you said, everything is theoretical when it comes to dog training. And yeah, we do have some good studies out there that make some proofs on like different things like stress levels, this, that, and the other, and so
Yes.
on. But it's still theoretical because even those
Mhm.
studies are using very, very like minute amounts of dogs, or they have extremes that they're working with, or there's biases, or it's inconclusive, and so on, right? I mean, it can go everywhere with that shit. So like a study that says an e-collar is more stressful and harmful for a dog. I have another study that says treat withholding is more stressful for dogs while e-collars are not. So we do have studies, but in general it's all theoretical. So you use the e-collar differently than me. So tell me what you were talking about, like, your dog's conditioned. Let's start there.
Okay.
Your dog is conditioned to the e-collar, and to preface it, my opposing thing is I don't fucking condition dogs to e-collars, but this is where it comes about with us using the tools differently.
Okay. So, all right. Basically, what I want to tell you, the way you use it, I do not disagree. I want to preface this with that because I do think there is times. So, let's go back for a second.
Yeah, yeah, let's roll back because when you said that, people are gonna be like, "But how
What do
does
you?
he use it?"
Yes.
So tell
Yeah.
me how you use it. How do you
Okay.
use e-collars?
So I use it. I do use it similar to you. I have done it before where my dog wants to go fight, wants to go chase something. So I've had moments where a rabbit finds his way into my backyard, and I don't want my dog getting a hold of that rabbit. So when, like, I told you how we kind of went with the whole e-collar thing, there it was only like a brief moment of how we conditioned. So it wasn't even fair to say he was conditioned. So I had the e-collar, let lights into the backyard, saw a rabbit, went for it. I put it on a high stin, Boom. He yelped, came right back. He never chased the rabbit again. So there, I do believe there are moments that you can do things like that if it's
Yeah.
controlled. The reason why I prefer conditioning an animal majority of the time is because sometimes there are situations that aren't like mine, where I have a fenced-in yard, where he can't really get away from me. Because when you just put an e-collar on a dog, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes, and you stim the dog doesn't understand what's going on with the e-collar or that sensation, and you're putting it on an adversive level to get him to stop doing something. The dog now starts to try to run away and get away from that stim. We're talking about escape at this point. He's trying to
Hmm.
escape the sensation. Well, I can either, there's been many videos out there that people have done this, and the dog is like, oh, I'm going for the cat. Stim, turns around real quick because the cat just did this to me, or something just did it to me when I went for the cat. So he goes back to his owner. Perfect, amazing, agree. I've seen videos that you've done the same thing. Perfect, amazing, agree. But there are going to be people, and there are situations when they do that, and the dog just, what they think is I'm pushing through the stem isn't really pushing through the stem. It's I'm trying to get away, and it has a you find yourself in a worse situation than where you started with.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to condition my dog. So how I go about that is simple. Some people put the e-collar on the dog for like a day or two. Obviously, you take them off after a few hours, so on and so forth, to avoid any issues. But people put it on the dog, so the dog kind of gets used to it as being a collar, right? That's up to you if you want to. But where I do this is I can have him on his placemat, or right now, Elias is right next to me. He's laying on the floor, relaxing, just hanging out. He likes to be by my feet. I can take the e-collar and I'll start off at like one or two stim for a split second, and I'm watching my dog. And I keep going up one or two levels until I see the smallest reaction from my dog, whether it's a ear twitch or a just a look up or whatever, and that tells me that that's the lowest level that he is perceiving the stim. Once I find that working level, I then will put a long lead on him,
Hmm.
and I would then start with a stim, say Elias come, and I will put some pressure on the lead to get him to come towards me. Once he turns and makes some um, determined steps towards me and starts making his way to me, I release the pressure or release the stem. Now, I do want to preface this though. That's how I first did it with Elias, because this is what was taught to me with the training group. I do now adopt the idea of, before I put a e-collar on, I work them through different stages. Slip, prong, e-collar. After the dog understands what I am asking of it, when he really understands what down means, sit means, come, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
When a dog truly understands these behaviors, and I can reinforce it with a leash, whether it's prong or slip, and through leash corrections and leash work, then I will add the e-collar still on a leash, so he really understands, and I know he really understands what I need from him when it comes to e-collar work. So that way, when if I had to do a high adversive because he's about to maul a dog or whatever,
Hmm.
and I hit him with it on that high aversive, whatever the level may be, for him, sometimes it's like 40, 50 or higher, depending how aroused he is, um, which has happened like once or twice. But I know he's going to come back. He
So
knows.
yeah, so the what I'm hearing is the majority of the time you're using the e-collar for a lot of this when you're conditioning it, you're using it as a negative reinforcement.
Yes.
But if you are going to use it as a punishment, you are stacking it with another behavior. So it's aversive to avoid the behavior, but it's also stacked with like a recall, for instance. So now the dog knows, oh shit, that didn't feel good, but where do I go?
Yes, because I want to avoid a situation where the dog starts to try to escape in the wrong direction. And
Hmm.
also, when we do things like when it starts to be, I start to work negative reinforcement. So I'm talking about sit down, things from a distance, things that are to make it just to enhance his obedience. It's at a working level. You know what I mean? Are there moments when people, like we're talking about sports and so on and so forth? what you do is once your dog understands you have a working level and he's blowing you off and you know he understands, you can give it a punishment, and that punishment might be a boost of a +5 or a +10, whatever significance it makes to the dog, but not overly so. Like he's running to maul the dog, so I had to put it at 100 because he's really going for it. He's really there, because he's such in high drive. Versus, hey, you just don't want to listen to me because you don't want to listen because you just want to gaff me off. But we're working on things. Then I'm gonna do like a +5. He's like, okay, that was annoying. Let me sit. You know what I'm saying? Other people, and there have been situations when people kind of raise it up and they kind of do it too high, and the dog doesn't know what's going on, and you're trying to work it in that level. Because I've seen it before. You know what I mean? Like the dog is now kind of like freaking out because he's not conditioned to it. So he was like, it's always a zap because I'm chasing a horse. This particular person I'm talking about, won't mention names. He uses his e-collar because the dog chases horses, chases animals. Problem is, he's not consistent with it. So he'll put the dog in the backyard, he go inside, and the dog has already been chasing something for who knows how long, and he's like, oh, now I'm going to use it. You know what I'm saying? So the consistency isn't there. And then when we're trying to work and I'm doing things what he sees me doing with my dog, he's like, oh, I want to do that. He knows sit. Dog doesn't really know sit. So he's telling him sit. He doesn't, and he stims him. And the dog is kind of like confused on what to do because he's not sure of the command period. And now you're adding a stim on top of that when he doesn't really know how to use that because how to turn it off. He's confused. And now he's
Yep.
starting to raise it up higher and higher. And the dog starts to react in a manner that's not okay because the dog does not know what it needs to do to turn it off. So when I teach a lie is, hey, you come to me, and then that come turns into place, and then that come and place turns into sit. The dog starts to understand what I say, and when I add the stem is what I need you to do. So there'll be a moment like right now, I'll tell Elias to say sit, and he doesn't want to, and I put a tap on his, I'll tap the e-collar, and then he sits because he's like, oh, boom. Then if I say down, and I tap it, he goes down. You know what I mean? The stem isn't telling him to do it. My verbal cue is telling him to do it. The stem is just reinforcing what I'm asking of him, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why like I'm big on conditioning because I've seen a lot of people skip that phase and then the dog is just confused and has no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically stimming and punishing this dog unfairly when it's the owner isn't doing what he needs to do to be fair with the dog,
Yeah.
to
So
give the dog clarity.
yeah. So with me, I tell people all the time, just when discussing e-collars, I don't like to tell people online how to use them because then they're going to get one thing they know how to, but just discussing them, I always say that, timing is really important,
Yes.
but also not being fucking trigger happy is
Yes.
very important too. People, they get that e-collar on, and for every single little thing, they're like, stim, stim, stim. And it confuses the shit out of a dog. And it's not like the dog is blowing off high levels of stim. The dog just doesn't know what to do. And
Yes.
because the dog doesn't know what you're communicating, they're just going to keep doing whatever because they're like, I don't fucking know here, dude. I just don't
Yes.
know. So that's going to be an issue, but timing is everything. And here, I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we're going to pull up the Gojo
Okay.
thing, right? Share this. So you can see my screen okay, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me pause this and see if I can go back. Oh, okay. So here's Gojo. So he's going after chickens here. Can you hear the volume on this?
No, I can't hear the volume. I just hear
Okay.
you.
All right. I'll just mute it so I don't get confused with hearing myself talking while I'm talking. All right.
Got
Let
you.
me pop it back in. So here's Gojo. He wants to get after these chickens. He's wearing an e-collar. He goes
Mhm.
over there. You can see I stem him and he backs up a little bit, turns right back around. So now I'm using negative reinforcement. I'm holding that stem down. Bam. He's leaving. Right. But
That's
then he
okay.
blows it off and I realize he doesn't care. So I crank it the fuck up. And at this point, bam. I get him hard, and he is like, nope, fuck that, right? Fuck
Okay, so
that.
let me break this video down real quick for you. And this
And
is why I'm
and there
okay with
here
it.
he is, and here he is trying to, and I'm not stimming him at all. I'm not saying a thing. I'm just letting him make a decision based off that last final stim, the high level shock. And you can see he is just watching, and then it's avoidance, right? That is active avoidance is what he just learned.
Yes. So no, I agree with what's going on here. This is why. And this is what I was talking about earlier, why I'm okay with this. When you did this, a couple of things you when you walked me through this right now, you said you gave him a stim to leave him alone. It was
Hmm.
high enough for him to be like, let me back up.
Yep.
And then it was enough for you continue to hold it. He moved and you let go the moment he got away.
Yep.
So that's meaning that was clarity there because the moment the dog left the situation, you stopped the stim.
Yep.
You stopped the stim. You weren't telling him, come, do this, do the other, hop on your back two legs, yada, 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 confusing the dog because I have no clue what it is. And you hold down the stim. No, you said, you basically stimmed the dog when he got too close to the chickens. He moved away because he didn't know what it was. The moment he got away from everything, you let go of the stim. Boom, perfect. That works. That works because the dog, there was clarity there. That's clarity. You know what I mean? You weren't trying to command your dog doing all these crazy things. You let it do it on his own,
Hmm.
operant conditioning. So once the dog figure out getting away from here makes this stop, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yep.
You know?
So that actually leads into what I was saying about how things bleed to each other's fluid, right? When he went in there, right, utilizing that first stem, it's a positive punishment. He backed away, turned right back around, held it down. Now it turned into a negative reinforcement, right? And then right when I let it go, bam, positive reinforcement. Like that would just hit three of the four aspects of operant conditioning right then and there within a couple seconds,
Yes.
right? And yeah, I mean, absolutely what you were saying. What you were saying. Now, let me share the screen again because this is the video that got me and you actually talking.
Yes, I know exactly.
All right. And let me share this. Share. I'm gonna just share the screen again. Share. Here we go. So
Yep.
yep. So what we have is I'm recalling my dogs after they ate, working on threshold levels stuff. And
And
Hayes,
Gojo knows the recall. I
yeah,
want to
Gojo
preface that. He
knows.
does.
Yeah.
He knows. He knows.
Yep. So Gojo recalls, Nezzy already recalled. Hayes is just staring at me like Hayes knows to recall. We've seen videos plenty of times. You've seen videos of Hayes recalling, and he
Mhm.
didn't want to. He's just like, "Fuck you, dude. I'm gonna just stand here." So I'm just
Shaking,
stemming him. I'm just
shaking.
holding it down, holding it down, holding it down, waiting until he finally comes to me, and then he comes to me, and I let it go. I'm utilizing negative reinforcement, but after watching this video numerous times, it was very different than the Gojo and chicken thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, I'm trying to give him a command rather than just having him avoid a situation.
Yes.
And so he did not understand what I wanted out of him. He just knew there's some shit going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get back here again. We'll watch it one more time. Because it's interesting just seeing him going in circles. There's shit going on, and I'm saying, come, come, right? And eventually he comes and I turn it off. And my idea for this, right? My idea was, this is his first time ever having negative reinforcement. He knows
Mm-hmm.
what a recall is, right? But I've never taught him what to do whenever he gets stemmed.
Mm-hmm.
And so with me, I was like, okay, create a repetition, a pattern of this. And so this first time he's going to be a little confused, but the next time it's going to get better and better and better. And then he'll figure it out by repetition and solving the pattern, right? But as you were explaining to me, and we'll get into this in a second, you were explaining to me that there's more effective or efficient ways to do it. And so this is me realizing when it comes to the negative reinforcement with combining it with a command, that's where I'm faltering a little bit. I need to get better at, right? So let's look at this one more time.
Got you.
So you can see I recall him, he stares at me, he's not listening, and then right there, bam, he got that stem and it's still holding. And you see him trying to shake it off, and now he's going to go in circles, goes in circles, goes in
Mhm.
circles.
Yep.
And then eventually he's like, shit, I'm just going to run to you. And he probably didn't run to me at all because of my recall. He ran to me because I was like, I'm his safe space, right? He trusts me.
Yes.
And that's why he ran to me, not because I recalled.
Yes.
And
So
yeah,
sorry.
so
Go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead. I want you to give me the rundown because again, you use e-collars differently than me. And so when I'm finally kind of going towards the whole negative reinforcement side of the e-collar, I normally am using long lines or prong collars or slip leads, things like that, leashes. I'm using handling skills with different types of leashes for my negative reinforcement normally. So this time I'm leading into the negative reinforcement with the e-collar, and I can absolutely see where you're saying it's just ineffective. But I want you to run down. I want you to just dissect the shit out of that.
Okay. So again, I want to preface this with with this. What you just said is 100% true. He didn't come back to you because he recalled because you're doing the recall. You are his safe place, safe space. He knows when something is going on. If I run to this man who feeds me, does all these things, I'm good here.
Hmm.
This is where I'm good at. Now, the moment he got to you and you turn off the e-collar, that can definitely eventually work. I'm not going to say it cannot,
Hmm.
because he's going to start to eventually pick up on when there's a stim and I run to him, it comes off. You know what I mean? So it can definitely work. What it comes to me where I disagree is when you were talking about when we saw he's going in circles, he's shaking his head. He is in a place of high stress right there. So if I was to use an e-collar on the line, so doing work and stuff, but I put it at a higher level, he starts to shake like that. That's just added stress. I know I need to dial it down a little bit. It's a little bit too much for him right now to
Hmm.
really focus, right? So when you're doing that, and you're like, at first you was like stimming him, and I think when we talked about this before, you said it was on a certain level, and you started to raise it up more and more. So at first, what happened most likely is you stimmed him, and he's like, "What is that? What is that?" He's telling me to come, but what's the sensation I'm feeling? What do I do here? So he's trying to figure that out, right? Because he has no, there's nothing in that was taught to him to show him what he needs to do once he feels that. Do I sit? Do I go in circles? Do I take a hula hoop? What do I do here? He has no clue. And as you start to raise it, right now it becomes adversive to a point where he has no control what to do. He's just trying to get away from that sensation, escape again. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Fuck it. Let me just run to him. Right. But if you were to have put a leash on him and you put it on the lowest level of what he can perceive to, and you stim, you say come, and then you give it some, what I call, I don't know if this is correct or not. You're a lot better with terminology. I call it guiding pressure because I have it on a leash and I'm not pulling him to me. I'm showing him what I want him to do, like what you do normally with your long leads and prongs. You do the same thing. So once the dog turns to you and makes some determined steps to you, and you release that pressure, and you do that repetitively, he's gonna get that so much faster. Versus, I'm gonna stem this, and I'm gonna let him go through all those behaviors we just watched him go through till he finally gets here. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
So that's why, like, I say conditioning, because you're not doing the other video you showed me. I agree with you, brother. You have like, hey, I have chickens, I have a kid, sometimes he runs out, so I'm gonna put an e-collar on him just in case, so he doesn't get to my chickens, goats, whatever you may have. So you stim him, and he knows you're the safe place, he can come back to you. Great, that works. And sometimes I would even say, in that type of situation, it works better because it is truly operant. His behavior caused this stim when I went for this cat, dog, goat, whatever. The moment I stopped going for him, it stopped. Okay, let me not do that.
Yeah.
But once we start doing it as reinforcement to do that, hey, I need you to heal, come back, do these little things where it doesn't really require him to be like stimmed on a high level, it gets confusion for the dog. So we
Yeah.
have to build that clarity. Clarity is always the name of the game when it comes to dog training. It's up there with consistency. It's up there with all that. You have to be clear of what you want and what you expect. Because if you're not clear and you're just punishing the dog, you're falling into a line of abuse. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Not saying that yes, what you did. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's like we talked about this before. When people are just punishing their dogs for no reason, dog has no clue. That's getting to a point where like that's not okay.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I am looking for, because I want to talk about leash handling. So
Yes, please, because especially
yeah.
when it comes to defensive handling, me and you talked about it. I've been pretty lucky in my career so far,
Hmm.
where I didn't have to really use any of that. And you, my friend, have had many experiences with dogs. I wanted a piece of you,
Yep.
and I know you know what you're doing when it comes to that situation.
Oh
Definitely want to
yeah.
start from you here, bro.
Yep. So I'm gonna share my screen a little bit and we're gonna walk through a couple videos because I wanna, and I'll explain it for anybody that's listening and that's not viewing it from the YouTube side of things. Um, Let me see, zoom right here. Share. I'll just share my screen
Did
again.
that make sense what I said in the
Yes,
earlier?
absolutely did. You know,
I
and I
didn't
love
come
that
off as an
dissection.
asshole, did I?
No,
Okay.
nah, no. Like that's the whole reason I wanted you to dissect it because even myself, I have a hell of a lot of experience as a trainer. Um, but every trainer is going to excel in something and need work on other avenues of their skill set when it comes to training, right? There's
Mhm.
trainers out there that just are god awful with clickers, right? There's
Mhm.
trainers out there that don't know how to use tools. There's trainers
Mhm.
out there that need better leash handling skills. There's trainers out there that need to be able to reward more timely and so on. And it's just I love it when somebody dissects it. Actually we had somebody named D who we I was up on their live not too long ago and we went into my page and I love what they said to do and I've started doing it is
Mhm.
go look at training videos and put it on mute. So that way you don't have to listen to the bullshit that the trainer's trying to say and
Mhm.
just watch the trainer's handling skills and watch what the dog's behavior is. And that can help you dissect things a lot better than listening to what somebody's trying to claim, right?
Yeah, agreed.
And this is kind of what we're doing here too. Obviously, it's me, so I'm giving you my, what's going on here or whatever, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But you can still see it, it's on mute. So can you see this background? Yeah.
Yes, I see you. You're walking behind this lady.
Yep. So right here, this is Simba. Simba was raised during the pandemic, had zero socialization, or environmental exposure, so has reactivity on high levels towards people, or so I thought, right? And
Mm,
and if you can see how this dog is, you can't hear it, but this dog, I tried to give it a reward just to see it would take it. I already knew it wouldn't, but I always like to these days, right?
yeah.
But like right when I walk up, just
Look
watch
at
this
that
dog.
tail wag.
Yeah,
Look at
yeah.
that. It went from high and it goes
Watch
down
right up
so
here.
low.
Watch right up here. When I get up here, watch the dog jump and watch its mouth. Yeah, you saw that? So
Teeth.
this dog's baring its teeth. He wants a piece of me. It's just nonstop aggressively growling, right? So I told her to go ahead and put the muzzle on because I don't know which direction it's going to go. And me taking the dog out of the kennel is going to tell me exactly what to do. So you can see I'm keeping myself safe, keeping myself at a distance. When I work these high level reactivities, you'll see me working flip flops a lot. Nope, I'm in shoes. Right? I am in shoes. I need to keep my balance and everything like that, not trip up on something like this. So I'm keeping myself safe. I have the door opening. And one thing you'll notice, right? The moment the dog comes out of it, right? What I'm going to do is I turn my body sideways. I am not going to directly face off with this dog. And anytime the dog comes to face me, I keep the leash extended, my arms extended, but bam. See how I'm continuously keeping myself to the side?
Got you.
Watch this. The dog faces me out and I keep turning my body. I don't want to face you directly because I'm not here to fight, right? But what I also noticed with this dog is the dog is now, instead of trying to fight me, the dog is now trying to get back. All right. The dog is scared of what's going on. The dog's like, I'm anxious now. I'm afraid. My ears are pinned a bit. My tail is tucked now. No more wag. No more of the stimulation. He's looking at me and I keep just turning my body. I don't want to face him directly. I'm just sideways, right? Just
Mhm.
sideways. And that's one big thing. And you can see how I'm holding the leash in my left hand and my right hand. I'm letting the dog do what it wants to, explore the world. This is a different case than other cases I have. And now that the dog's exploring, perfect. He looks at me, I look sideways. Looks at me, I turn sideways. And I'm very quick on that. See? He looked at
Mhm.
me. If you notice that right
Yeah.
here,
He was about to be committed, but you
he
moved.
was about to be committed. Yes, he was about to be committed. Look, he looks at me. Boom, he looks at me. I go sideways. He looks at me again. He starts to walk towards me. And then he noticed that I wasn't facing him. I don't want to face him. He's like, okay, I'll come over here instead. Right. Um,
Mm.
so I'm just not letting him think that I'm here to fight you. Right. And this is actually something I see people do all the time when it comes to their own dogs. I have this whole when I come up to somebody with their dogs, and let's say it's a client or a person, a friend, they have dogs. No look, no touch, no talk, right?
Mhm.
And what you want to do is you don't even want the dog to think that you're there for them. I don't even look at the dog. I look at the owner. I walk to the owner. I talk to the owner. I don't engage with the fucking dog at all. Because the moment you engage with that dog, even if that dog is sound, a stranger's walking up, the right when they walked in the door, walked in my vicinity, they looked at me, they said something at me, and now they're walking at me. My defenses are gonna be up like fucking crazy, man. I'm gonna be fucking anxious. Like that shit just is how it shit goes south. real quick. And so I'm doing everything in my power to handle the leash and let him do his thing, right? And talking to the owner, I'm just not really engaging. Leash is loose. And so further over here, now we're going out. I'm creating extra stimulation with the dog. At this point, the dog kind of wants to get away, but I know the dog likes walks, so let's go walk around. Let's do things, right? So you can see that he's starting to get less and less, freaked out. He's behaving and shit like that, right? So I wanted to test another theory. What happens when the owner holds the lead and I don't, right? Because the dog's been playing
Yep.
avoidant towards me, right?
Yep.
Dog doesn't give a shit. Dog does not care that I'm there. I start running up and down the fucking road too. The dog just doesn't care. I'm like, okay, let me handle this dog some more, right? And so at this point, the dog is now leaning on me on his own accord. And those are good signs, right?
Okay.
And so, and he's letting me pet him and stuff like that, not really caring. He's still a little nervous, little pin, and but I have a feeling this dog does not want to hurt me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see here. This is like 25 minutes into the lesson, 30 minutes into the lesson, right?
No. Yeah.
And bam, pop it off. Right when that shit comes off, right? I immediately here's some treats. I'm not even gonna hand it to you in my hands. I'm just gonna pop them on the ground, give you something to like, ooh, this is awesome, right? And so now I'm able to face the dog. Look at this. Look at an ears up.
Mm-hmm.
He's now looking like a regular fucking, dog.
No.
Like, look at that. He's just hanging out now, just doing his thing and shit. And so what I found is that he just needs a whole lot of exposure to realize that people aren't as scary. Like, look at that. Look at that. From one to the other. I did everything right in this to make the dog realize I'm not here to fight you. You're going to have to deal with some of your stressors. I'm not dangerous. You have no reason to fight me. And see that? Now I'm working on handling skills on letting him engage me. Boom. There. I let him correct himself. I anticipate him getting to the end of the lead. I give him a minor correction. He's looking at me, and this is where a bunch of engagement comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see me this is how I teach dogs to walk loosely on a leash a lot of times, right? And that's what I'm explaining to her right there. I have plenty of other videos that actually show it more high level. But yeah, that's one dog with handling skills. Uh as far as more handling skills, oh my goodness, this dog, Sammy. Sammy. Sammy's a good dog. Let's see.
Good boy. You would
Let
like
me
Elias. I think you would get along with him very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's I can introduce him to people now. Before that was a headache, but now I can definitely do it. And once he knows you and once he gets to know you and you take off his muzzle, he's your best friend. I think that's like that's my own thing that I need that I'll never get past. I will always introduce him to people with a muzzle on,
Yeah.
just because I know his history. And even though I'm pretty confident he'll be fine, it's just a safety precaution. I would never not adopt anymore when it comes to him, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Just because he's done it before. And some people get nervous and get weird, and I rather avoid any mishaps in general.
Yeah.
Not to say that I let him meet people, but if you come over the house and you're someone that comes over a lot, this and the other, then I would like for to make sure my dog is good with you versus just keeping him locked up all the time.
All right. So let's go to Jonas. Jonas is a fun one. This one, this dog is a big old bully breed, right? I don't think he's any pedigree, even though the owners want to claim it. But they don't have a bloodline. They just call him Blue, a blue
Mm-hmm.
pit. Where are you at, Mr. Jonas? Maybe I have a bunch of shorts with you on it. I have a bunch of shorts with Jonas on it. He's this dog right here. So this dog right here, Jonas, I spent 11 months teaching him how to walk loosely on a leash, not because I did anything wrong. He would do it every time that I was there, but when I wasn't there, the owners would just let him do fuck all. And that goes to show like sometimes owners just don't want to do shit. All right, so I have him on a prong collar, right? And every time before you even leave, we're walking out the garage. He tries to go forward, and he knows to sit with pressure, right? So he has the prong on, sit with pressure. It's loose. So let's start walking. He starts walking. Nope, pressure, right? And if you can see with prong collars, I can do a lot lighter of a correction than I would with a flat collar or a slip lead, because it does so much extra work for me, right? Let's see. So, yep, barely any. I wish you saw what I was actually doing with my own handling skills. But right here is just showing that even with this big ass dog pulling on the prong, he was pulling, and this is one thing a lot of people get wrong. When the dog is pulling like this, they let them pull and pull through. And we'll get into that topic here in a minute. But if you notice, what I'm doing is I give a little slack and then a little correction, a little slack, little correction. So that way I'm actually communicating a correction rather than just let him pull through.
Yeah,
Slack, correction, bam, he comes back.
I
Right?
noticed a lot of people would do that, and it's funny because again,
Mm-hmm.
if when I would take dogs out, whether it's Elias or dogs I'm training, and we got to the point where we're using a prong collar, people would see like, I don't know how to use my prong collar like you do. I'm like, what do you mean? You know, and they'll have their dog on them, like he just pulls me through. So I would just hand the leash off back to the owner, walk
Mm-hmm.
over. I'll give you a second because you know, like you're struggling with your dog. Take the dog, and I'm like, you're letting it pull you. So you have
Yeah.
no recourse on how to give a correction. So I always describe when you give a correction, like when we were younger and dad came home with a belt and he did a little popping motion, that's how that works. When the dog is pulling, you can't do the pop motion.
Yep.
So you got to give it, like what you just said is 100% true. Give it that little bit of slack.
So that
So
way
you,
you can create the correction. Yes,
yep.
absolutely. So here's another one, right? This right here is now instead of positive punishment, Loda is doing with the corrections with the same dog, I'm using negative reinforcement. Um, I don't use treats when teaching a dog to walk nicely on a leash because the
Mm-hmm.
walk is the reward. The dog sees the walk, continuing the walk is so high level rewarding to many dogs that you can utilize that. You know, the dog decides what's rewarding to it, so why might as well have a natural reward, right? So let's see here. Here we go. Um, is it this one right here? Okay, no, it's the other video. This one I'm actually he's listening to the leash pops. Let me get that negative reinforcement one. It's a really cool one.
But I get
Uh
what you're saying when you're talking about why you look. This is it.
I think so. Let me see. I'm gonna just kind of skip through. Oh no, this is him actually paying attention. This
No,
is
but I
him
get
like
what
I'm
you're.
walking, and then when I stop, he's actually paying attention. See those little tiny bits of engagement? There you go. He's engaging right there. And I go in the opposite direction. He's just coming with me and just like, yeah, he's not even getting to the end of it. Like like, and it's funny, breeds like him and stuff, like he's not gonna always look at you and engage, but you see he's flicking his ear. He's engaging his own way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is one on there where it's basically I'll just explain it. He's
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the leash. It's super tight, and I'm not popping or anything. I'm just standing there for like 2 minutes straight, not saying a damn word. And then eventually he gets frustrated and annoyed, looks at me, and then he backs up a little bit. Right when he loosens up, bam, we start walking again. And then when he got to the end of it, we stopped again for a couple minutes. And then once he realized we're stopped and he starts getting annoyed with me and stuff, he backed up to me. And I'm like, great, let's keep walking. Right. I said nothing. I said nothing, just stayed quiet. After two or three times of that, the moment he got to the end of the leash, he just backed himself back up to loosen it up because he realized, oh, every time that I pull, the thing that I like to do just stops. So I'll stop pulling, right? Like it clicked with him. Um, and again, just reinforcement, right? Negative reinforcement. But yeah, I mean, there's different ways to use leash handling, and we'll have to do a more like really hardcore in depth version of it.
No,
Um,
no, yeah,
soon.
I
But
agree.
what I wanted to talk about is something that we kind of touched base on the pulling through, right?
Yeah.
Um, opposition reflex.
Yes.
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't realize what they're doing when they have a dog that's reactive on a leash, right? This happens all the time. Why is my dog reactive on a leash? It's because you taught the dog the exact same way people teach dogs in bite sports. You taught them opposition reflex. And if you want to go in a little more depth on what opposition reflex is, the floor is yours.
Okay, so opposition reflex is basically when you just, in the most common method, is when you're walking your dog sees something and you're pulling it. He now pulls against you. He's doing the opposite of what you're trying to do. It's a reflexual thing for it, right? So
Hmm.
he wants to pull you down the street. He's trying to, no matter how hard you're pulling against him, he's pulling down the street. Some people are not capable of controlling their dog because dogs are strong.
Yeah.
And you get people who are like, I want this XL bully, yada, yada, yada. And you put it on a flat collar or worse, a harness. I have nothing against harnesses. They're used for certain times, for certain things. You briefly mentioned bite sports and stuff like that. People use harnesses.
Yeah.
Um, but when you use a harness, what people forget, you're putting it around the strongest part of the dogs, and it's pulling you. So what's happening is, as you are pulling against the dog, and the dog is pulling against you, and it takes a step, reinforcement. It takes another step, reinforcement, all the way till it gets to where it wants to get to. And once it gets there, that frustration that was built up on can come out in many different ways, which is what causes that reactivity you were just talking about so
Hmm.
often.
Yeah, yeah. So what I've noticed a lot of times, what happens is their dog is pulling, 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 like you said, take another step reinforcing, take another step reinforcing, but you're also still frustrating the dog. You're getting it closer and closer and closer to his threshold, right? And then finally the dog gets right there to where it wanted to be, pulling the entire time resistance against the dog, you trying to pull back to the dog is there. And then you just pull the dog away, and the dog's like, oh, I'm gonna bite onto the thing that I wanted. Right. I'm gonna get that thing because I wanted it that bad. I'm over threshold now, reactivity, and it's a fucking mess. But you are teaching the dog that that is the behavior you want. You are
Yes.
reinforcing that behavior, right?
Yes.
Just like a lot of times, right? What I've seen a lot of times too is like, let's say a dog is fearful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the dog becomes reactive due to the fear. Let's say it's on a leash. The dog is barking and lunging at people and other dogs, let's say other dogs. And the other people walking their dogs keep walking. The dog in their head's like, I did that, right? Now, what happens a lot of times too is that the dog starts doing the behavior out of fear. But then the more that they rehearse that behavior and the more they are rewarded, the more the chemicals in their body, in their brain go off like that felt good. And eventually, instead of being fearful, they start to really fucking enjoy doing it.
Yeah, it's like the mailman theory.
Hmm.
Like we talked, dogs might or see this random person coming by, and it's like, what is this? I'm scared. What? Bark, 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 lunge, 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 and all of a sudden, the thing just walks away.
Yeah.
Not because it was scared, but because he had to keep going. But he thinks now, my doing what
Hmm.
I just did is what it is. It's
Yep.
what made him go away. And then
Yep.
what happens from that point? It becomes confident.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Um, the dog now knows, hey, if I want this thing to go away, all I gotta do is bark, bark, bark.
Yeah.
But then what can happen from there? Now you're in a different type of situation. At the house, you had the door. You take your dog out for a walk. This stranger walking by because it's not properly socialized. The handler might be a little bit weak, not giving the dog clarity of what he expects or he or she expects the dog to do. And this person walks by, and now it's rah, 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 but the person didn't leave. He's there tying his shoe, whatever it may be, right? Now the dog is go. Now a couple of things happen. Either the dog just stops and just like looks at the owner like, okay, that didn't work. What do we do now? Maybe we should run. Maybe we should leave. Or it escalates. Now I went from barking to lunging to baring teeth to actively trying to bite. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like these type of situations when not controlled properly, and when you don't understand what you're doing, and you're inadvertently reinforcing certain behaviors, you can have a bigger issue on your hands versus just, let me put this specific tool on it, give it a little correction, and
Hmm.
now he's like, oh, don't do that. Okay, mom, sorry.
Yep. Yep. I mean, extinction of a behavior starts when the behavior stops working, but there's this thing called extinction bursts for anybody
Mm-hmm.
listening in. And extinction burst is basically last ditch effort to do the behavior that used to be working. Right. And that means it's going to be so much worse than what the behavior was. Right. So a lot of times what will happen for me with working with reactivity is that the dog has never they use a lot of management and avoidance protocol, right? Avoid the things that make the dog go off, right? And so when
Mhm.
I come in and let's say I handle that leash, right? The owner will just be shocked. It's like, my dog has never done that before. That is so out of character. It's like, well, the dog has never ever been put in a situation where it had the opportunity to rehearse this behavior, but this was in the dog the whole time.
Mhm.
Right. And then what they'll see is they'll see it start getting a little improvements. And then all of a sudden, this just crazy burst of last ditch effort. And it just looks extreme because it is extreme. But if done right, and that if that doesn't work for the dog at that point, they just stop doing the shit. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, that didn't work anymore. But the thing is, from there, they stopped doing it because I didn't let it work. Now we have to be consistent across the board.
Yes.
Everybody in that dog's household has to be consistent. And if they're not, then the dog's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna just, regress and start rehearsing the behavior again.
And
Right.
just to piggyback off of that, for those listening in, you said something about they're so used to avoiding it, going the opposite direction, and everything. And for those listening, they're like, why don't you just keep doing that? Because it's not always feasible. There might be a situation when you're walking in a park, which happens to because everybody takes their dog to a park. Say you have a dog react to dog, and you like want to walk away, right? Turn the opposite direction. But now there's another person with a dog in that direction. And then you turn back around, there's a lady behind you with a dog. What do you do then? You can't walk away. So now you are forced to be in a situation that
Yeah.
you have no control over.
Well, then they'll argue, then don't go
Huh?
to parks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what about this? You live in a big city. You have a
Mm-hmm.
dog. The dog is afraid of all the car noises and bicyclists and foot traffic, and you live on the second or third or 15th floor of whatever skyrise apartment that you live in, and the only thing you can do is go outside to let your dog go potty and get exercise. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot, yeah, I mean, I guess you can move to the countryside and then slowly start working towards the aversive stimulations, or you just fucking deal with it.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like I know earlier I mentioned, depending on the situation where I might take on a certain case. But again, like I live here in Georgia. There are people here, like I said, that have 5 acres of land and more,
Hmm.
and that can be like, my dog's gonna be happy here,
Yeah.
or like I don't take my fearful dog out to places. He just chills in the house. We play in the backyard. He gets his exercise. He's good and she's comfortable like this. That's fine. But for those cases where you have to face these things, avoidance isn't always going to be plausible. You have to deal with these situations safe on. You create what people try to end up doing is they create the bubble dog. You remember Bubble Boy because the
Hmm.
mom was afraid of everything of
Yeah.
him getting sick. Same situation. You want to shelter your dog from
The
these
bubble
high
dog.
stress. I'm
I
telling
like that.
you,
I'm using that term, the bubble dog.
yeah, man, use it,
The
please do.
avoidant dogs. Yeah, people that avoid everything, those are bubble dogs. I love
Yeah,
it.
what are you gonna do? Because like that's you're trying to shelter your dog from stress. You
Hmm.
can't do that. That's not feasible. Because one, you don't know what stresses your dog out. Because you said it before. So many people have said it. The dog is the only one that can determine what's aversive to itself. So what what I'm saying. So whenever an aversion, whether you're using a stim or not, or just in certain environments, that is stressful. So when you teach your dog that all we have to do is walk away from it, or he reacts a certain manner and we leave from that stressful environment, that's all he has to do. That creates
Hmm.
reactivity as well.
Yeah.
Instead of teaching it, hey, I know you don't like this, I know it sucks, but you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you go through it. But a lot of times where people lack in this lack of trust between the owner and the dog. Like if your dog, what was that dog that we saw in the video? Um, Gojo.
Gojo. Yeah. Yeah.
I guarantee you, Gojo has a lot of trust in you.
The husky.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee you can take him anywhere you want, and if it's a situation that's a little bit stressful, he's gonna be like, I might not want to do this, and you put a little bit of pressure
All
on
my
the lead.
dogs, all my dogs, even
Mm-hmm.
Hayes with his like, random spikes that he can have, 100% trust in me, right?
Yeah,
100% trust because that's what I don't just punish my dogs, right?
yeah.
I just tell my dogs these things you can't do. These things you can do, and then I let my dogs be dogs because I'm the laziest fucking trainer out there, right? I really
Facts.
am. It's like we have rules that we're very consistent about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know those rules. So we're very consistent about those rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like the obedience down and some advanced obedience and shit like that. But I just let them be fucking dogs. And then like 5 or 6 months later, maybe 3 months, who knows? Like once I see some things getting rusty, then okay, we're gonna spend a day or two doing some obedience training, recap, touch base again, and then now you can just go be fucking dogs again, right? Um,
Yes.
but but I'm okay with that, right? I say you know, the what was it? It's I'm just brain farted the term, like dogs. They are, oh my goodness. Binary. There we go. The binary dog, right? It's a cool theory, right? So dogs only understand yes and no, right?
Okay.
That's all they understand. And then you can expand on that to, for other, for obedience training and creating like boundaries of whatever your rules are and shit. But at the base level, they understand yes, yes is good, no, no is not good, right?
Yeah.
And it's even easier than that. Yes is the absence of no, right? So I
Mhm.
mean, if anybody listening in, if you've had children, you understand the concept of, well, you never said I couldn't, right? That's how fucking dogs are, right? Yes is the absence of no. So when creating these boundaries and shit like that, your rules of the house, you don't have to use a whole lot of yeses. You don't have to do all that shit. As long as I'm not saying just punish the shit out of your dogs, but no's, man. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. But all this other shit, fucking go at it, right? Do
Oh
whatever the
yeah.
fuck you want. You just can't do this over here, right?
No, 100%. Like that goes back to engagement and everything. When it comes to punishment, like we're not talking about, hey, beat your dog, do this. It's not allowed to step 1 foot out of line. Like things happen. But when we talk about punishment, it's not about high level stims. It's not about like popping the shit out of your dog on a prong or
Yep.
hanging it from a slip lead. All it
Or some of
is.
this really old school methods like helicoptering your dog. I make jokes about that shit all the time, but that was a thing. That was a fucking thing. Like you have a dog on a freaking like lead and you're like swinging or helicoptering the bitch around like 1940s type shit, like
No, yeah, like that.
crazy times.
Yeah, no, like if I reserve things like that for a dog that's trying to maul my face, which
Oh
luckily
yeah.
I have
Oh
not come
yeah.
across those. Like the only dogs that have been somewhat like that,
Mm-hmm.
a simple lift on that prong, pick his front paws up real quick, and he's just like, okay, I can't go nowhere. Put
Yeah.
him down. He's like, I don't want to do that no more.
Yeah,
Like I have not come across, and I know they're out there, and then I know it's a matter of time before I come across them.
yeah.
You have dogs you're gonna have to fight. You know what I mean? Because they just want to, and because no one has stood up to them in their own
Yeah.
household. You see that a lot. But my point being is, it's not about doing these high level aversions to these dogs when we say punishment. It's
Mm-mm.
about keeping and maintaining boundaries.
Yeah.
Are there going to be times where I have to stim my dog on a high level? Sure. There might be a time where I have to do it because the situation calls for it, because it's potentially dangerous for him or something else,
So
right?
I think this is where a lot of people get confused with the whole punishment thing, right? Um, at first, when creating the boundaries is when you're going to use the higher levels of punishment, right? When creating the boundaries, because the dogs have never learned to avoid certain things, so they're going to blow through a lot of things a lot higher level. But once you establish the boundaries, which doesn't take long with the right levels of punishment, right? That
Mm-hmm.
communicates with a dog. So once you set those boundaries, you get to stop using those punishers because the boundaries are set, and then every so often you got to correct it. And at that point, the corrections are going to be a lot less stressful, a lot lower level. I
Mm-hmm.
much rather use a temporary 10-minute session of high level punishment than have my dog for the next 3 months to multiple years being super anxious, over fucking simulated and so on, possibly doing dangerous behaviors and shit, and just know what the fuck to do.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Like, for example, I have the trash. I don't like my dogs in the trash. You can potentially throw something away there that could be extremely harmful to your
I
dog.
love what you said on the phone the other day. I want you to repeat it
Okay.
about your opinion of trash.
All right. I think so. When you do so, I'm gonna start with this. When you correct your dog, the level of correction is determined not only by the dog, the action, but also what you deem dangerous, right?
Yep.
So for some people, trash might not be a big thing on the list. So they might be like, no, body pressure, move away, right? That's a correction still. That's still positive punishment.
Yep.
For me, he's getting a high stin, high versus stin. And people are going to be like, that's, you're horrible. You're this, you're that, and the other. No, because I have a lock on my garbage. He can't get into it. But because I'm human and I forget to lock it, and he can, we as people, what do you throw away in your trash, man? You can
Mm-hmm.
definitely throw away a lithium battery, like one or two, because the controller died. And
Cooked
I'm cook
chicken bones that can splinter.
exactly. And right now
Um,
I'm about to cook some steaks for the family, and then
mhm.
the packaging is gonna go in the trash. And what if
Plastics. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
so on. My dad, this was years ago, but my dad texted me years ago and I was an asshole. I didn't mean to be an asshole, but I was. He texted me saying that his dog died, and suffocated inside of a bag of Doritos.
mm,
And it's sad, it sucks, but my my shitty response was who was a dumbass that left the Doritos out, and his only response was me. And I was like, oh damn it.
sorry, Dad. No,
Sorry,
but
dude. Sorry.
yeah,
But I mean, but it's the truth. Like, and it sucks to have to tell people this shit sometimes. It's like you're the fucking reason why your dog is dead.
bro. In some
You know,
places,
and of course we want to navigate it better than that, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like you said, trash. Why is the trash can not such a big deal to so many people when so much toxic shit goes in there and the dog is like,
yes.
ooh, everything in there looks fun and enticing. Let me go fucking eat it.
And then, but you know what fixes it? One good correction.
One very good correction, absolutely.
And then again, obviously, it's
Well
consistency.
placed, well
You know,
timed correction.
yeah, obviously after that, still consistency, and still, even with good corrections and everything, whether you're using positive reinforcement only or you're using balance train, whatever, the dog, like you said, they're opportunistic.
Yeah.
Oh, dad isn't here, mom isn't here.
Mm-hmm.
He got out of the kennel because I'm an idiot and I didn't lock the bottom one, whatever it may be. He got out. Things can happen. You are whenever, regardless of whatever method you or whatever wheelhouse you fall under, these animals are opportunistic. If you're not around and you're not there to reinforce this, whatever, can you have good dogs that won't do it? Sure, there are dogs out there. Do you want to risk that? You know what I mean? So obviously with the consistency and everything, but like when you use these methods
Mm-hmm.
and I punish a dog and say like I'm not paying attention, that again, what I said before, I'm gonna stand by
Yeah.
by this. That punishment gives you that split second
Mm-hmm.
extra for you to correct the behavior so it doesn't so something bad doesn't happen.
Yeah, so
You know?
I pulled up my calculator, just did some math for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a dog, a puppy, right? And let's say that on average 10 years, right? The
Mm-hmm.
dog's gonna live. And let's say you work 8 hours a day, full-time job, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might have a 2 week vacation somewhere there, and you might not. So between, 52 weeks, 50 to 52 weeks a year, roughly, something like that, that you may be working. Um, if you leave your dog outside of a crate, right? Outside of a crate, what you just did is you're allowing your dog to do whatever the fuck it wants to do for between 2.25 to 3 years of its life.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine just leaving your dog home, just to spend having like an automatic water and food dispenser and like a way it can go outside and potty, and just leaving your dog alone for 3 years straight with the things it needs to survive. And imagine that dog, would it be trained? Would it be a danger? Would that dog be doing fucking stupid shit? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it fucking would. Like that's a lot of time for the dog, because most of the time dogs are gonna be sleeping during the day anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the kennel, it's gonna sleep the whole time. Outside of the kennel, it might sleep on the couch and then go move to the crate or move to another spot and go back to sleep, right? But there's gonna be little moments where the dog's like, oh, that aspirin bottle that they accidentally left on the counter within reach looks really enticing. Oh, what is this super glue over here? Oh, this lithium battery on that's charging over here, and this for the camera or whatever, right? Like dogs, you're giving them that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you're also giving them the opportunity to rehearse behaviors too. So other things, right? Let's say reactivity behaviors. Um, why is my dog constantly always like lunging and barking at the window? Well, every single day that you left the dog out and somebody walks by, they run to the window and bark at it. Then the person just keeps walking. They have their headphones in, they keep walking, and then the dog's like, "Yeah, I did that. I fucking did that. I barked that fucker away." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's let's keep doing it. Oh, my dog won't stop doing it. Then put your dog in a fucking crate for starters.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let them keep rehearsing it when you're not around.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
100%. And that goes back to all these other things. Like, I'm here with my dogs. I'm not punishing him. What I do, Elias is doing something annoying. Hey, Elias, leave it. Okay, he comes over here. Good
how
boy.
often do you use your e-collar? When you
I,
you have an e-collar on your dogs, anytime your dogs are off leash, right? You have an e-collar on them when you're outside, right?
yes, I have.
Okay.
I have the e-collar on him right now too. He just
What are
has it
what
on
are
him.
what are what are times that because I know you're probably like me in
So
this. You have
right now,
specific times that you will always put an e-collar on your dog. What are
yeah.
those?
Well, for Elias, the way he is, I'm honestly comfortable when he has an e-collar on him when he all the time. So he had for the majority of the time he has an e-collar on him.
Yeah.
Now I rotate it. He doesn't have any issues with it. Doesn't mess with his neck. I don't use it. Recently, earlier when I was talking about, I just used my e-collar, right? He was over there by the window. I don't care that he's by the window. But then he started getting riled up. He probably saw a cat, probably saw a dog. All I did was I said, and he was getting riled up. I said, Elias, leave it.
Yeah.
He turned around, came back to me, but then halfway there, he stopped, turned back around to face the window.
Hmm.
He got a correction for that. Because I just told you to come to me. You know what I'm saying? You understand that. And it
Yeah.
wasn't a high level correction, it wasn't on anything. It was like a so his working level was like an 8. So I
Yeah.
already knew that it was like that working level wasn't working for this situation. He's being aroused. So I bumped it to like a 15.
Hmm.
And he's like, okay, came back, came over here. I gave him some pets, and he just laid down at my feet. And then he was just looking at me. He's just hanging out.
Yeah.
Now he's just staring. This is his personality. He's just staring, but he's by me. And then
Hmm.
he just saw my hand move, and now he's looking at me. And he's like, I want some love, and he wants pets. So I'm giving him pets. The e-collar for me, now that he understands what it is, all that other stuff, is that backstop, is that reinforcement. And I'm a little bit lazy, instead of me walking up over there, grab him, come back, smossed in. He turns around, comes right back to me. Cool. He's like, okay. He knows he can be touched from any distance. Is
Hmm.
kind of how I like looking at it, you know. And I'm not zapping him for every little thing. He listens to his commands. Leave it is a big thing. He's like, okay, cool, leave it. Hey, sit. I'm sit. It was just that thing. He was just being really intense at the door, really getting aroused, and I don't want him possibly reacting and scratching my door. So I told him leave it. He didn't listen. Got his stem. Now he's back here,
Yeah.
and I've been up all day with him and my family. That's the first time I used it the whole day.
Yeah. Yeah. So with me, I have a couple reasons why I will put an e-collar on my dog, but there are three things that no matter what, e-collars are going on, right?
Yeah.
If they are outside at all,
Mm-hmm.
outside in my yard without a leash on, e-collars
Mm-hmm.
are on.
Yes.
If we are in public, whether I have a leash on or not on, if we are in any public setting, e-collars are on. And then if I have guests coming over, those are the three things that will automatically get an e-collar on at all times.
Got you.
At all
Yeah.
times. How often do I use it? Hardly ever. Um, yeah, once in a while, my dogs, of course, they've rehearsed behaviors before. It's likely they're gonna eventually do it again, especially when what happens with extinction, right? Extinction of a behavior, the behavior can happen again once the punisher isn't punished for a long time, then they
Mm-hmm.
can rehearse the behavior again. Just like when you teach a new behavior using rewards-based systems, if you stop using rewards altogether, eventually that behavior will become extinct as well, but it
Mm-hmm.
can be relearned very quickly, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
right when I notice that my dogs are rehearsing behavior, then bam, we're gonna work on that behavior real quick, and that's when they get stemmed, right? And so like that's when I really use the e-collars, but the reason why I use them for those three situations primarily, that's when they'll always go on, is because those are the three situations where things can go wrong And I rather be able to control those situations just in case, right?
No, 100%. So with I had so except for Kona, all my dogs have been e-collar trained.
Hmm.
Um, so
What
before
kind of
Kona,
dogs do you have currently?
okay, so right now I have Elias, who's a bully mix. I had Nala, she passed away about a year ago now. She was also another bully mix, but she was very cold. And now I have Kona, who's a German Shepherd, possibly cattle dog mix. High drive, very high drive. Kona, when we got her, she was 5 years old. They told her she was one. Good dog. Haven't really gotten around to using the e-collar on her yet because I'm looking to buy a new one for her. But Nala was e-collar trait. She would, like what you said, for her, when she's outside either in the backyard or when we go out into parks, because I can take Elias out to a park, uh, public park, and have him off leash, and that e-collar reliability is amazing.
Hmm.
And Nala too was that. But the difference was Nala won't, like I said, she was like a bully mix, but she was really cold, very submissive, and she didn't dash for any, she didn't care about dogs, she didn't care about nothing. So in the house, I'm not too worried about it. If it was like, hey, I accidentally opened the door, wasn't paying attention, I'm not worried about her dashing out. Not that you should never be aware, but I wasn't too worried about her getting to anything crazy because she had good obedience. She wasn't like Elias. Elias is the type of dog where I think it's genetically a genetic thing with him that he is just that animal aggressive and dog aggressive, you know? So he
Hmm.
has good management. When I have him on his leash and everything, he's great, but he still gets his moments. So that e-collar for me is more like just in case I have an accident or I'm not paying attention. I opened the door and I thought Elias was upstairs or Elias was somewhere else, and he's right behind me because it has happened. I was upstairs in my room. I came downstairs because we had pizza delivered, and normally I tell Elias to stay. He stays, and he's with my wife, and he likes to be upstairs with my wife and everything. He crept downstairs. I had no clue he was behind me. He never does that. He usually sticks up there, and he only follows me around other different times, but he listens for the most part. He happened to be behind me. I opened the door, and by the corner of my eye, I caught him. Like, oh, you're right here. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So that's why I keep it on him because it's a little safety precaution because of how he is. You know, so each dog is also different. But like what you said, outside off leash, I will always have an e-collar on my dog just in case, just in case.
Yeah. So with me, I have a Catahoula leopard dog, a Siberian Husky, and then the I he's a Spitz breed, but I think we need to get him DNA tested, but I think Hayes is a Klekai Shiba Inu mix, is what I think he is.
Okay.
And if you look at all three of those breeds, they are high energy, high drive, highly independent dogs, right? They are the first type of dogs that want to blow you the fuck off because they are bred to make their own decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't have that all the time. So absolutely, they're gonna rehearse behaviors a lot more often than other dogs that are more malleable and willing to listen. Um, and that's completely fine. I picked the breeds because I'm a masochist, and well, I didn't pick this third one, but the other two, yeah, I'm a masochist, so might as well, right? Get two highly stubborn dogs. And all stubborn means is independent, right?
Yeah.
So I mean that's my dogs, but they're so well behaved in comparison. If I compare my husky compared to other people's huskies, it's night and day. If I compare my Catahoula to anybody else's Catahoula, my Catahoula is like the worst representation of a Catahoula, because she has been putting in multiple years of hardcore training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they have very bad representation because of what we've done with her. But yeah, each of the dogs, every dog that I have currently has gotten that high level fucking zap. At one point or another, they have. Does that stop them from wanting to do the behaviors eventually? Hell no. Hell no. They're gonna do the things that they want to fucking do. That's the breeds I have. Other dogs, like let's say I have a Labrador. It's likely that I can get away with using majority of treats using a stem once. Now the dog's like never gonna do that thing again. It's just like you tell the dog to run off a cliff, it's gonna run off a cliff, you know? Like,
Yeah, no, one
that's just
hundred
the type of
percent.
dog it is, and that's completely fine.
No, I
Completely fine.
agree. I agree 100% because talking about Elias,
Hmm.
you know, he and I focus on him right now because it's just easier because some
Yeah.
of the dogs I've worked with, to be honest, I feel were a little bit easier to work with.
Yeah.
Plus, Elias is a dog I learned on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's always been there was that learning curve with him. But I did notice so genetics plays a big role when it comes to dogs. And
Yeah.
I feel like people underestimate that.
Yep.
You
I
know,
mean, it goes into the pit bull topic we talk about every so often,
yeah.
and people like to ignore the pit bull genetics, but they'll listen to every other thing out there, right? And the argument I see a lot of times when we're doing like lives about pit bulls and their genetic traits, like for a well-bred pit bull, is they like to sit there and say, "Oh, it's not genetics, it's the
The way they were
owner, it's
raised.
the way
Yeah.
they were raised, the environmental factors and the owner factors." When it comes to extreme reactivity with any dog, that's exactly what that is. It's environmental and owner factors. But when
Mhm.
it comes to the baseline genetics, who's more likely to go after a small animal, a pit bull or a
Mhm.
golden retriever?
Yeah. You know, like,
I mean, that's probably a bad example because it's golden retrievers retrieve, but
yeah.
you know,
But I
but
get what you're saying.
but
I
you
get what you're
can't,
saying.
you can never out train genetics. You can dampen, absolutely, or you can take those genetics and shape and mold the dog into the best version of itself. You capitalizing on those genetics, right? That's why people are using pit bulls as hunting dogs right now, boar hunting dogs, because they're
Mhm.
utilizing their genetics to take advantage of it to give them a job, right? Great.
Yeah.
Great, but what I don't get is when people sit there, and I'll say it, my idea is like 50% genetics, 30% environment, 20% owner. That's what's going to really be what your dog's behavior is, right?
Mhm.
And even within a certain breed, there's outliers, and not every dog's going to be the same. So we have to work at the dog at an individual level. I'm going to go ahead and say that so that way people don't come at me after they listen to this shit. But even at a baseline, like I know that a husky's gonna husky. I know a pit bull's gonna pit bull.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it's gonna be, right? And I'm not going to like, what am I going to do? Put a pointer down because they won't stop pointing?
Yeah. No, 100%. And like I said in the beginning of this, right? I am still new to this game.
Hmm.
I feel that I have a lot of knowledge I brought that I had to teach myself and that I got from other people like you and many other people within the community that helped me grow.
Hmm.
Um, I am gaining more and more experience every day because I do volunteer at a kennel.
Hmm.
We train with dogs to become police dogs. I
Awesome.
also get to go and work with they send me to go work with pet dog owners on some behavior mod cases and everything else. So I've gotten some mentoring throughout my time with a lot of other people as well. However, I preface this because I've learned you can do so much with these dogs. But at the end of the day, like you just said, the dog is going to be a dog. The dog is going to be what it was bred to do. But
Dog's
you have,
gonna dog.
yep. And that's why when I talk about lies, a lot of people might be here like, oh, you have this dog and he still has these issues. But he's a great dog. If you would have seen, well, I'm not going to say great dog,
Hmm.
but if you would have seen where he was when I first got him to where I got him now on my own, the change is drastic.
Yeah.
There are still people are like, oh, you have your dog on an e-collar all day. Yeah, but I don't use it.
Yeah.
It rotates. He's
Yeah.
not being hurt. And the reason for it is just in case something happens. Because I do have nieces and nephews and family that come over, and the last thing I want is for me to like not pay attention for whatever reason, which doesn't happen, but just in case, he gets out. Because you got to remember when we were growing up and we went to family members who have dogs, how many times did you let them out by accident? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I have this just in case,
Hmm.
because I know my dog. I know what he is. He's not a hard dog. He's not a red case. He's had his issues,
Yep.
but he is a management case and he has certain genetic traits.
Yeah.
He comes from a specific breed. He comes from different type of dogs. So that's going to come up. My management skills with him are amazing. I can take him out to a lot of places when there's a lot of dogs, a lot of kids, and he's focus on me and we're playing this and the other.
Mhm.
But just in case something was to happen, I have tools that can help me back it up just if
Yep.
I need to. And that's what this with tools. Like everybody has these issues with them. Oh, prong cutters are bad. Slip beats are bad. E-collars are bad. But then it's like, oh, what about the dog that doesn't like the halty? Oh, it's because you didn't condition it
Oh
properly.
my
I just saw
gosh.
someone talk about this, right? That's why I'm kind
Yeah.
of, I forgot who
Yeah.
it
I
was.
mean, this is great. Like it leads into the discussion I wanted to have, a quick discussion of like why are aversive tools being pushed to be banned? There's a lot of countries out there that have banned a lot of aversive tools, right?
So
And
on that
it's
subject,
going to eventually come here to the United States, right? And yeah, let's touch base on this. Like there's so many people that are so scared of using aversives or even the word punishment.
okay, so really quick, I'm gonna send this to you via email when we get a chance
Okay.
because I've had this conversation with people in the past because I come where before I got to the kennel I'm at now, I used to train with another group, amazing group of people, and they had a lot of different what you call coaches. Some were positive reinforcement only, force free only. And me and them would talk about these things. She'll talk about how the dog feels, this and the other. And we brought up the situation at the UK, how they were trying to ban e collars, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they have a department, it's called Department of Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs, DEFRA. So it's a study I'm not sure you're familiar with. It's called the DEFRA study, and it goes into electronic training collars um, for cats and dogs in England, and they have this whole thing. So in a nutshell, because I'm not trying to read it verbatim and all that, what basically happened was DEFRA conducted a study. They had, I think it was 3 or 4 groups. Group A, B, and C. I'm not sure. I can't remember if they had a fourth group or not. But group A, B, and C. Group A had trainers. So each group had a specific number of dogs with the same behavior issues, right? And what happened was you had Group A, Group B, and Group C. Group A were trainers with experience with e-collars. Group C were the force-free type people, and I think Group B was more like a little bit combination of the both. I can't remember exactly. So what they basically did was and they used it on livestock, trying to teach the dogs not to go for livestock. And what happened was they came and found results that the dogs that are trained on e-collars were kind of like afraid after their personality, demeanor, and all this stuff took a big turn. But the people who were using the force-free stuff, their dogs were a lot different. But this is where it gets interesting. And there's another group. Let me see if I can find it. I have it on my phone that basically reviewed the studies that went on and found that there's a lot of misleading information within the original DEFRA study, which is, I think, at the time, I'm not sure they did now, I haven't really followed, but at the time, the UK postponed the ban based on the new findings of this group. Because they were talking about one, the e-collars they were using back then are like basic shock collars. So they're no longer what we have now. Two, the times period of when the studies happened. Ones were like in the code versus the ones who were using the force free methods where there were better climate conditions. And then three, the biggest one was, I believe, the ones in, again, don't quote me on this because I can't remember because it's been so long since I looked it up. Uh, I believe it was Group C never took their dogs off of a long lead. So you can't really verify if these dogs will go after these animals or not. So there's a lot of things that came into question when we were talking about this. But this study was basically what was leading the path to trying to ban e-collars in the UK at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't know if they
So
rewent
there's
back.
there's a lot of studies out there. Like for instance, um the the American Veterinarian Society of Animal Behavior, ASAV, um, they have a list of studies that they cite as the reason why positive reinforcement is the only thing you ever need to do, ban aversives, yada yada. You go look into all the studies, half of them are, and I am going to be doing another deep dive of this. I've already done them before, but I'm going to do a deep dive eventually of this again for everybody, of all the studies. But half the studies are surveys. If you actually look at the survey studies, they say inconclusive, or bias, not large enough data pool, yada yada. If you see the actual other peer review studies, bias, not large enough data pool, inconclusive, actually shows opposing argument than what the people are trying to claim, or they refuse to tell you how they use the aversive tool.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a very good peer review study and you're not going to tell me how you use the stimuli, I am not going to listen to that fucking study, because for all I know, you threw on the fucking e-collar, cranked it to 100, and just held that fucking button down while the dog was in a kennel. For all I fucking know. And then you tested its stress levels, or you decided to document that, learned helplessness and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, how is this learned helplessness? What did you do to invoke learned helplessness? But if you refuse to tell me, then that's telling in itself, right? So I want to get to head halties. I'm gonna share my screen again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, all right. So my screen. Okay, so this is a dog. If you can see, there's the nasal terminates. The vomeronasal organ is right down here, and so on. These are definitely like the olfactory bulb is right here behind near the eye and stuff.
Okay.
Um, Over here, this actually shows, right here will show it more the same thing I was just showing you, but on a X-ray of a dog. Right
Okay.
now, here's what's really fun. Look at all of these nerves that goes into the face and snout muzzle
Mm-hmm.
of the dog. All of these are different nerves, right? And we think this is not aversive. You're
Yeah.
telling me that this is how a dog's nervous system and its face is set up, and this is okay?
Yeah. And not just that.
Like it actually gets a lot less over here. You're saying this is okay, but because these right here are metal and scary looking, these are worse. Like it blows my mind, people's inability to actually understand what they're talking about. Like, I love it when somebody tells me, "Oh, the spike collar is bad." It's like you don't even know the name of the tool. How can you have an opinion?
Yeah. No, 100%. Like going back to it real quick, it's funny because I forget what content creator said this, but it was like, oh, whenever you see someone talk about how bad all these other tools are, but then when your dog has an aversion to head halty, they quickly tell you that, oh, it's because it wasn't conditioned right.
Mhm.
But if you condition your prong, your e-collar, so on and so forth, because like, bro, I have like again with Elias, I learned on him. But you know how many people I know who work these e-collars and these prong collars? A Kona sees my prong collar and she is losing her shit. She is jumping up and down. She's running to the door. She's waiting. She's like, put it on, because she knows that means we're going outside.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
she
and the thing
wants
is,
it.
it's not even that, like I can never say, oh, they like the tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not that they like the tool. They like what is associated with the tool.
Sure.
And if you do it right, they associate, like, for instance, I take the e-collar off the wall. My dogs are lining up at the door because they know, like, oh, this means I get to run around digging shit,
Yeah.
right? Like,
100%.
like the times that dogs become, and I think I've talked to you about this. I think we even disagreed at one point on this. And then we realized that we're saying the same shit.
Yeah.
Um, when a dog becomes collar wise, it's when the human is reactively using the collar, which means you're not ever putting the collar on the dog until the dog does something dumb. Then you put it on the dog and then start shocking them or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Now the dog knows that the only time it ever gets shocked is when this thing is on my neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get collar wise. The reason why your dog's not, collar wise to the prong collars, or mine aren't collar wise to the e collars, is because every single time they go outside, they wear it. right? So and because I don't have to use the stimulation of it, like the shock or vibrate, whatever sound, I don't have to use it, but maybe 1% of the time. The other 99% of the time that they're using it, they're doing fuck all. They're being dogs, which means that they don't care that they're wearing it.
I would have to. I will say I believe. Maybe might have to disagree here real quick,
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
it's fine. But like I believe whether when it comes to these tools, the dog understands. Like for example, the e-collar. Regardless of how you what we do or how they feel about it, the dog knows there's this thing on my neck that has these prods on me.
Hmm.
However, though, like what you just said, when the association is there in that manner where it's like this time to play, it's time to do things. The dog knows when he's going to get a correction, not going to get a correction. When he's doing something wrong, which is why your dog is so well behaved because you set the boundaries. Yeah, they know that this tool might give off that correction, but they
Hmm.
also know I can have so much freedom. I can do all these things I love doing as long
Yeah.
as I don't do that thing. If I
Yeah.
do
I mean,
that thing, it ain't
I've,
happening.
I'm not gonna lie, like none of us are perfect, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a couple times where I have like the trigger in my pocket. I don't realize like when I bent down, it like pushes a button and then all of a sudden I hear my dog. I'm like, oh fuck, I just shocked my dogs.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
But the thing is like I've had people say it's like, oh, that's gonna fuck the dog up. I'm like, if it's a one-off, it's no different than a dog running through a field and a bee stung them like that one
Yeah.
time, right? It's like they're not gonna stop him from running through the field. At first, they might be like, I'm not sure if I should go back over there, and then they'll be like, oh, nothing happens when I come over here. Okay, cool. But like if it's a repetitive thing, then yeah, now the dog is gonna be like, I don't want to go over in that spot again because every time I do, I get shocked. You
Yeah.
know,
Because
like
people forget when it comes to these tools, just as much as it's showing the dog what you do not want it to do, we as owners slash trainers need to teach the dog what's okay to do.
yes,
That pre
absolutely.
that prevents the dog from shutting down.
Yeah,
Like Elias, he knows he can't chase little kids, the dog, car, whatever. But you know what I do in the backyard, and when we go out, he's
fucking
chasing
play.
that ball. I have
Yep.
that flirt pole, and he's going nuts. That
Hmm.
spring pole, he's holding onto it. But when if I tell
Have
him
you
no on this,
have you ever gotten to witness my husky and my Catahoula roughhousing?
no, I have not.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go on live in the next couple of days. It's been rainy as hell here, but once it dries up just slightly and it's not a pond in my backyard,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'll bring them outside. What you'll see Gojo get amped up and he likes to run laps. Nezzy is smart about it. She'll chase him halfway around the lap that he's making and then turn around, backtrack, and wait for him to get to the other side. Once he gets to the other side, right when they go face to face, it's on, man. It looks aggressive, it looks violent, it sounds violent, but I know them, I know how they play, those two dogs individually. And they play rough, man. They do. And sometimes it gets so intense. Like I've seen where Nezzy like football checked Gojo and Gojo did like a backflip and shit and rolled and then got up. It's like, yeah, let's keep fucking going, right? Um, that's the type of shit I like. I want my dogs to be able to just let loose and shit. But
Mm-hmm.
I've also taught my dogs a heavy level break it up command because if they get to a point of stimulation where I'm like, this could end up being dangerous, break it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
They at this point when I say that they split. It doesn't matter what the fuck they're doing, right? When I say that I can recall my dog Nezzy out of a dog fight, I truly mean that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Gojo might need a little more coaxing, but Nezzy, I know I can. And so when I do break it up, they both split directions for about a minute. And Gojo will just like go grab a stick, and Nezzy would just like walk up to me and just look at me. And
Mm-hmm.
then Gojo will get amped up again. He'll start running laps, and they're allowed to go back and play because that 1 minute, that 60 seconds that they split themselves apart, allowed them to come way back under threshold. And now they can go ham again until it gets to that point again and then break it up. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my version of management. I'm gonna let my dogs run all out and shit like that. But the only reason why I can manage to that level, is because I've already set the boundaries.
Yes. No, one
People
hundred
love to
percent.
do it backwards. Um, they think that don't use the punishment, don't set the boundaries, and just like, do the avoidance thing and stuff and so on. It's like, or on the other hand, maybe set the boundaries first and then start giving the dog more leash, so to speak,
Freedom.
right?
Yeah.
Give them that more freedom once you can trust the dog to have the freedom. They have to earn it,
Yes.
right?
No, I agree with you 100%. When I whether it's, sorry for interrupting, my bad, brother. Um, Puppies or new dogs, I do not care. Puppy, older dog, younger, whatever it is. When they come into my house,
Mm-hmm.
they live on a leash.
Yeah.
If they're not in their kennels, they're on a leash. Whether
Yeah.
I'm taking them into the backyard, taking them on a walk, or in the house, they're on a leash and they're attached to me. Why? Because for one, let's talk about puppies real quick. Puppies, rule of thumb, every 4 hours, they need to be taken out to use the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they go out to use the bathroom. If they're attached to me, I want them to kind of learn to, what they can and cannot do for a couple minutes a day before I put them back into their kennel to sleep because they're puppies, I want them attached to me. So I walk around and he's not getting to go and run off and hide behind a couch and take a sock or a shoe and chew on it
Simply
and then me
put,
get mad.
simply put, that puppy doesn't get to fuck around. That puppy
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get to rehearse all these shitty behaviors. You have
Yes.
full control of that dog, so that dog can start earning its privileges once it realizes what it's allowed to do. Because it's a fresh fucking dog.
Yeah.
That dog doesn't know shit until we teach it.
Yep. And then when you talk about older dogs, say you get a rescue,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you don't know what it knows, what it
Nope.
doesn't know, what he wants to do.
Yep.
So again, and let's be honest, sometimes these rescues, or even someone that's like asking you to take the dog, like we've all had clients who have not been completely honest with us.
Yeah.
So you
And then on
don't,
top of that, again, a lot of clients have never been putting their dogs in situations where they will rehearse behaviors. And then on
Mhm,
top of that, at rescues, those dogs are in high stress environments. They're likely shut down, from the stress. So they're not going to display their true nature anyway. So, oh
about three
yeah,
weeks
this
in. Yeah.
dog, this dog is great around cats. No, that dog was just emotionally shut down. And 3 months later, that dog is going to eat your fucking cat.
Yeah, 100%. No, no, yeah, you're 100. Like I live by the 3-3-3 rule.
Yeah.
The first 3 days, the dog might not eat, might be showing certain type of behavior. At the 3 weeks, you're now seeing the dog come out more, and there's any behavior issues, that's when you're gonna see them come out. And at 3 months, that's who your dog is.
Yeah.
And I like obviously there's different outliers. Every dog is different, blah 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 blah. But for the most part, I do live by that rule when it comes to bringing a new dog into the house. And with that leash, I can definitely control the dog and set boundaries. And if there's a situation like, say, he's aggressive and now he wants to test me, you know, I can now have a way to manage the situation.
Yeah.
Like this is what goes back to when I was talking about earlier. I feel like people have strayed away from leash handling skills, prong, slip, whatever, and are using so many tools and so many things and not knowing what to do or how to do it.
Yeah, I
You know what
think
I mean?
I think it's a you know what dark ages mean, right? Where there's a dark age. Dark age just means loss of information. That's all it means, right? So sometimes we've actually had language dark ages where people lost the ability to actually read and write for a while until it came back and so on. There's technological dark ages out there and shit like that. I think right now we have hit a dog training dark age, right? Because what has happened over time is that people have been so gung-ho about like, never do this. Let me make you feel bad for doing this. And it's been 20, 30, 40 fucking years of this type of shit being pushed that now people are realizing, oh, like 70% of the dogs out there, I'm just giving a random number, but I'm going to assume 70% of the dogs out there are fucking messes. And people are starting to realize again, it's like, oh yeah, these are dogs, not people. Let me
Yeah.
start training them like fucking dogs. And then they're trying to grab all these tools and shit. And there's very little amount of people out there in the grand scheme of the quantity of trainers. There's very little amount of people out there that actually know how to efficiently and effectively and appropriately use these tools. Right.
Mhm.
So you have all these people out there, armchair trainers, I'll call them, people that train their own fucking dogs and then think that they are professional trainers. So now they're making YouTube videos and shit like that, trying to teach everybody else how to train their dog for reactivity and behavioral issues. And it's an age where people don't know what the fuck they're doing, but they know they need to do something.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, hopefully it changes around. I mean, this is why we're doing shit like this, getting more information out there.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Like dog training, learning theory. different methods, different tools. At the end of the day, it comes down to who's willing to listen and who's willing to put their ego away. Because I'm not the best, and I know I'm not the best, and
I'm
I
the
know
best. What are you talking
I'm
about?
far.
Just kidding.
you know, and
Yeah.
I'm still learning, and I
Yep.
feel like everybody should still be learning
That's
because.
how it should be. Everybody should always still be learning. Even if you want to be the most force-free, positive reinforcement, friendly, fucking gentle-handed trainer in the world, right? I think you should go take a class on using e-collars, right? Because
Mhm,
even if you don't want to use them, at least you'll know how they work. And then you might understand better why you don't want to use them.
mhm.
You know, like
Agreed.
you can't just make opinions when you don't know. That's like it's like eating food that you've never tried before.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I don't like that kind of food. Why not? Cause I don't. Like what kind of bullshit is that? You
Bro,
know?
and even for, and not just the for the force freak community, if you've never used an e-collar or you're limited knowledge, because right now I'm planning, because e-collar technologies will send you a DVD. Learberg freaking has been around for since what 1970 something,
Hmm.
putting dog stuff up. They still make videos. It's like I think it's a $70 course for a basic
Yeah.
introduction to
I mean, they
e-collars.
have a lot of great free resources too, Learberg.
Yeah,
Like
like
what I find funny that a lot of people will actually take old studies that are actual studies that you can repeat over and over again. And they're like,
mhm.
oh, these are outdated studies, right? Oh, this thing's like 50 years old. It's an outdated study. It's like, well, if you can repeat it, then it's still valid.
Yeah.
It's still valid, right? That's like saying, gravity, the theory of gravity is outdated. You know, like no.
Jesus Christ. No, bro, like 100%. Like I'm never gonna be the person that come on and knock on other trainers. I don't care you're force free, not force free, compulsion. I'm not gonna knock on you
I try
unless,
not to. I
yeah,
try not to, but certain trainers out there make it easy.
I get that. You know what I'm saying? I understand.
But
Trust
I'm
me, I
not
get
I'm
it.
not gonna push heat on people unless they kind of push it on themselves, right?
Yes.
Examples would be Zach George. I'm not the biggest fan. To be generous, I'm not the biggest fan, right? Yes, if you just want to learn some puppy obedience training shit, go read his books and stuff. Like he's really good at puppy obedience training, I guess. There's better people out there that I would prefer you read, but if you have to and only want to browse on YouTube or TikTok and listen to, some like entertainer tell you how to train a dog, that Zach George fine, whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, what I don't like about him is how he likes to weaponize his massive amount of following to try to push an agenda of banning aversives,
Yeah.
right? When he's never put himself in front of a reactive dog before.
I've heard this, and maybe you can shed a better light on this.
Hmm.
Because I try to look it up and I really can't find it right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that this is factual, but I've been told and I've heard it mentioned a few times. And I forgot, I don't know, in the last, like, I don't know if it's been the last 20, 30, whatever years, there's been an increase in dog attacks on humans. And a lot of people have associated with the rise in force free and positive training only.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, I'm not sure where they're getting these numbers or what, but I'm not gonna
Well,
say it's true, but I'm also not gonna say
so we
there's no
can't say
validity to it.
correlation is not causation. We know that. But
Mm-hmm.
what we can see is if you actually look at everything, people are more educated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So less people are buying backyard bred dogs. There it still gets happens. Puppy mills are still the thing,
Yeah.
but less and less people are getting dogs that have bad genetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's lessened. Okay. We have a lot better trainers out there, regardless on what methodology you're using. There's a lot more trainers out there, which means that it's cheaper to get training because there's a hell of a lot more. And then on,
Competition. Yeah.
yeah, competition, right? And they're a lot more well versed because of technology being able to spread information, right? So we know learning theory where before you would have to go to fucking college and get a freaking bachelor's or master's degree in human psychology to understand learning theory to the level that we can learn today, just by researching on our own, right? We have
Hmm.
massive amounts of studies that have been done over the years that we can look into and form opinions based on, right? So people are more educated. So dog training is up. Shitty breeding is down. It's not gone, it's down. Dog fighting is down, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, Less people are sending dogs into shelters, getting rid of dogs because they're starting to understand how to train their dogs and work with dogs, or they're reaching out to get trainers because they're more affordable. And I'm
Are
not saying
dog shelters
training, I'm
really
not saying,
down?
and if you look at shelters compared to 10 years ago, absolutely.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason what keeps our shelters up is because we keep importing dogs from overseas. We can get into that some other time, but
Oh wow, okay. Yeah.
yeah, we import them by the millions from shelters across seas to put them in our own shelters. Uh, you know that. Uh, but like, there's a lot of things that really relate to less dog attacks.
Really? Okay, cool.
But on the other hand, if dog attacks are rising and all these things that would have caused more dog attacks are now down, and the one thing that has increased is force-free training. I don't want to say a correlation is causation, but it's kind of apparent. Yeah, no, like,
Like I'm not
so
again, yeah. Like I'm not. I can't say I know what the numbers are or nothing like that,
yeah,
but I've heard
yeah.
about it many times,
I'll
and
have to look into it.
and what you just said makes sense, and it's something I definitely want to dig into and really watch. Because
Hmm.
again, I'm not gonna knock it because if you're really good with positive reinforcement, you can definitely motivate a dog to
Yo,
do a
if
lot.
you are really good with positive reinforcement, you can absolutely do the same thing without punishment. But there is very, very, very few people that are that fucking good. Like you're like in the top 0.001% of fucking dog trainers out there with your skill level, right?
And I would also
You're like
argue this.
Ivan Balabanov, like 5-time grand champion type fucking skill level.
He uses pressure though.
I know he uses pressure, but if he wanted to only use force-free approaches, I guarantee he'd be able to do it.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, this is the thing though, and I'll argue this, and I could be wrong, but I'll argue this. Even though you can get a dog to do what you want through positive reinforcement only, I do think there's going to be a time where whatever you are using as the reinforcer, the high value reward to get them to do what you want to do, there's going to be a time where the dog sees something that he considers to be higher reward, higher value. And the only thing that's going to stop it from trying to go do that and come back to you, I feel might be a adversive for it to be like, you know what? I don't want this bad thing to happen. I'd rather just stick with this good thing because I know that's going to get this. I could be wrong. I don't know. My logic is flawed, but I always think if there is, if I'm being given um, all the food and everything I want all the time, but then I want to do this thing, but I know if I step over there, I'm going to catch a little. My dad's going to whoop my ass real quick for going to the neighbor's house to eat versus what they're feeding me here. I might be a little bit more reluctant to go into the neighbor's house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just how I see things. I could be wrong, but that's just the school of thought I adopted.
I don't
If
think
that
it's a
makes any
bad,
sense,
yeah, it makes sense. I don't think it's a bad school of thought.
you know, that backstop is important to me. That backstop. That hey, here's the food, here's the hot dogs, but you're
Hmm.
trying to go for that rabbit for the neighbor's cat. You're gonna catch a little bit of a zap or a prong pop or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want that cat. I'd rather stick with the hot dogs and everything else because I don't want that aversive.
Yep.
But that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'm trying to find something real quick.
No, you're good.
I'm trying to find something. It's one of my favorite things to go back and look at.
You know what's funny? I'm looking over the notes we have. We did pretty good, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think we covered everything. That's why I'm looking for this other thing. That's why I'm looking for this other thing. It's so funny. Once I find it. Where are you at? I'm gonna find it. No, it's not this one, I don't think. Is it this next one? It might be this next one. I will find it. It is so fucking funny.
No, but real quick, since while you're looking,
Hmm.
what you did with that German Shepherd when you took the leash, I find it funny. I've done this several times. Like I told you, I haven't come across that dog that really wants me. It's more like there's issues with the handler. The handler isn't confident enough. The dog feels like he's in charge. And the
Yep.
moment I'm able to get the leash out of the handler, out of the owner's hands, and I have them stop moving with us, and I keep moving, and the dog realizes I have the leash, there's a split second of what do I do? And in that moment, because I'm taking on responsibility if the dog wants to come at me or not. I'm taking full responsibility of that situation. But a lot of these dogs, body language, everything tells me they're not really about it, and they're only being this way because of the handler. The moment I get them away from their handler, it's a different dog. Dog is more calm. Dog is more relaxed. Dog is less aggro. Dog isn't lunging, and they're always surprised. Like, what did you do? What was the trick? Nothing. There's
Hmm.
something going on with you and your dog.
Yep.
The dog feels he has to be the one that protects you.
Well, it's a big reason why, like, I've talked to people plenty of times about, like, when somebody calls me a compulsion trainer, right?
Yeah.
Sure, sometimes I am. Sometimes I use compulsion. Sometimes I'll use force free, whatever. Sometimes I'm somewhere in the middle, whatever. But when people call me a compulsion trainer, it's because they're looking at the videos that I have out there, where I'm working with high level aggression
Mm-hmm.
and or dangerous behaviors. And what I do when I go to clients, is I can see that this is so far beyond fucked for the owner that they are not confident. They cannot control this dog. So I will lean on punishment first before anything else to handle the behavior and start
Mm-hmm.
setting some ground rules. And then the owner, you see this immediately. The owner finally starts feeling like they can start handling the dog.
Yeah.
They become more confident. A confident handler and owner changes the entire dynamic of the household. That means every single day after that is going to get better and better. Now we can also start working on positive reinforcement. And now that we've set the boundaries of what is unacceptable behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and then start hitting things on both fronts. Yeah, but the biggest thing is like creating and making it to where the owner can handle it. Because let's say I'm there once a week. Let's just say
Yeah.
that's what I am once a week, right? Let's do some quick math real quick since we like math here. Okay, so once a week. So I'm there for 1 hour once
Mm-hmm.
a week, right? So 7 days in a week times 24 hours, right? Minus one. That's 167 hours that owner can fuck that dog up again.
No, yes. I agree with you 100%. Like, I know there's a lot of methods out there that can really build that trust and that engagement and all these things, which I am heavy on. I know you've heard me talk about how important engagement is and trust is with your dog and that bond. I really do. But I also agree that sometimes you as a trainer, you come across situations where you have to be a hammer first.
Yeah.
Like it's all dog dependent. We had a dog at the kennel I volunteer at who had some resource guarding issues. Um, I built a bond with him first before I did really any pressure or anything like that. He was that dog. Like, he was good. He would take food, but we built on that method because he was willing to take food from my hand. He was willing to engage with me. He was willing to be good with me, and I didn't give him anything where I knew was like for him it was like it was the ball. So I didn't give him a ball. Me and him were just working on food and me and our engagement with each other because that was how he was, right? Then when I put a prong on him and everything, and we started working with balls, it was different. I established a relationship with him, so when I corrected him, it was fair. Not saying that that's the best method, but with that dog, instead of bringing out something that I already know sets him off, and I'm able to just let me work up to it, I went that route. But I know you work with dogs that are just like, you don't have that option. You don't have that luxury. You have a dog that one of your videos, which is where we first really met and talked, was the one that you were telling about that he broke your ribs.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have the luxury to be like, hey, let me work with you a little bit. Let me build a relationship with you. No, it was okay. I need to set boundaries. I need to set them now because this dog is dangerous,
Yeah.
not just to me, to the owners and everybody around him. So this needs to be a hard line that you cannot cross. It needs to be established right now.
Hmm.
That's fair. You know what I mean? And that goes back to what we said in the beginning. Everything's dog dependent. When I introduce dogs, I do what I like to call letting them exist. So they're just existing. So they have their kennel, they're in their kennel. Elias knows something, go to their kennel. I let Elias out with Kona, they go into the backyard. We play, whatever, hang out in the house, yada, yada, yada.
Hmm.
Put them up, next dog's turn. And they kind of get used to the fact there's another dog in the house.
Yep.
And the
So,
other dog gets used to the fact that there's dogs in the house. I can't really speak too much on how to introduce puppies and what's
mhm.
appropriate, what's not appropriate, and I really had to do that. Um, because there's going to be a time where you kind of want them to kind of figure things out.
Oh yeah, I mean they're gonna have to figure some things out, but at the very beginning, you're gonna want to have a lot of ground rules. And the
Yeah.
moment any of the dogs decide to be a fucking dick, you put an end to it right then and there.
Yep.
Just like a mother dog would do to their fucking puppies. The whole thing where like yelp if the puppy bites you too hard. Fuck that, dude. That's like a squeaker and a squeak toy. The puppy's gonna be like, oh fuck yeah, that was awesome. Let's do it again. Right? What the yelp does, the reason why puppies when they're together, right, with the mother and shit like that. The reason why puppies will reduce their biting pressure and shit like that from another puppy yelping is because that's a sign to mom to step in and say, "All right, enough." Right? So the mom keeps a consistency of stop doing that shit, right? Just like us as humans, right? We stop the game and then it reduces the bite pressure because the game stopped, right? Every time you bite too hard, we stop the game. Okay. They'll stop biting so hard, right? The only time yelps really work for a fucking dog is if the dog is noise sensitive and it startles the dog. Now you create an aversive, a sound aversive, a noise aversive, and that's why it's working. But man, don't yelp to get your puppy to stop biting you. That's just the dog's gonna be like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it more. Let me make you yelp again. That was interesting. You know?
Squeak toys. What is it? It sounds like something dying. I have a. I'll film it next time I get a chance. When I have a squeak toy, I toss it. Kona grabs it, shakes it, puts her foot on it, and starts to tear and tear. And I forgot who it was. It's like, oh, that's so cute. She's playing. Like, no. I'm like, yeah, it's cute, but what she's doing, she thinks it's a real animal. She's killing it. And they
So
looked at it was my nieces. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's squeaking. She likes to squeak, and every time it squeaks, she tears.
yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. So with that said, though, I mean, I think it was a good conversation. I kind of want to wrap it up as it's gonna be a long episode, that's for sure. But that was awesome. Thank you so much for being up here. And for anybody listening in, since we were talking a lot about punishment and reinforcement and things like that, and really gravitating towards a conversation of punishment, to anybody out there that believes that positive reinforcement is say all end all of dog training and you should never use punishment, um, feel free to message or email me. I would love to see videos of your dog in real life. I want to see how your dog is in stressful environments or just a raw video of how is your dog when people come over, when strangers come over. Show me your dog. And with that said, thank you so much, Josh.
Brother, thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll have to do another episode in the future for sure. But again, that was great. I think we did great. I think I got nothing else. I mean, I could talk hours and hours and hours even further, but it's been a few hours. I think there's other things I might want to do. Um,
Sounds
so
good, man. No, same here. I gotta get my homework going, and I
yeah,
gotta spend some time with the wife.
awesome. Yep, same. No homework, but yeah, I do have a wife, and I think she enjoys me being around sometimes.
All
So,
right.
all right.
All right, brother, man. It was good talking to you. We'll do this soon.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Yeah, take care.